Welcome one and all, it's time for yet another Warhammer the Old World tournament report, and the Dwarves are back for the matched play guide, 2,600 points of objective scoring, dragon defeating, potentially, action. So, let's have a look at my army immediately. Also, by the way, this is the first tournament to feature Grand Cathay, and spoiler alert, I will be facing them in round one. So, immediately thrust into the excitement and the unknown. So, why Dwarves over Chaos Warriors for this one? Well, I don't think the Warriors of Chaos army that I have accumulated so far is very well equipped to deal with the matched play guide and the new scoring therein. There are a lot of objectives that require core units. I don't have a lot of those. I have a lot of dwarf units that can be core, so it makes more sense, and it's higher point level. I've just got more to choose from in the dwarf army, and haven't played them for a while. So it'll be nice to see whether they're more competitive in this new scene, which brings in a lot of the changes that I was hoping to see that would allow dwarfs to be more competitive. So, for example, dragons no longer should be able to just stomp through a ranked up unit of dudes anymore. That should be way less likely to happen with some of the changes to challenges and combat resolution. And infantry should be better because there are more places you can just stand and accumulate points over the course of a game, which is quite a big deal for infantry, so they don't have to go and attack the enemy. And infantry has also been buffed by the ability to gain extra save, extra ranks, attacking, and so on when they don't charge. So if you're just hanging out on an objective, someone wants to kill you, it's more difficult for them to take you out. So we'll see if the dwarves can thrive under those conditions. I'll go through my list first, and then I'll give you some reasoning behind the choices and the logic based on what we think the meta might be, because we don't know this is the first event for the match play guide. So, characters. We've got an Anvil of Doom. No runes whatsoever. It has been clarified that the Anvil of Doom can no longer take the Rune of Adamant to become toughness 10. That only affects the crew now, so in combat it would help, but from being shot with cannons, which is one of the big deals for the Anvil, wouldn't make any difference whatsoever. Let's see who we've got in the chat, by the way. We've got Jack, we've got Lambo, we've got Phil, we've got Martin, and we've got Steve. That is a legendary lineup we've got in there already. So, what else? We've got a Dwarf Engineer, who is down there with the handgun. So, I won't tell you the reasoning behind any of these changes yet, we're just going to go straight through it, but this is a fun one. Dwarf Engineer with the handgun, the Rune of Accuracy, and the Rune of Concussive Force, the Stupidity Gun. Then we've got a King on Shield Bearers, who is the General, with a great weapon, shield, and Master Rune of Adamant for toughness 10, so hopefully people just won't bother attacking him, and Rune of Fury for 1 extra attack. Then we've got the Thane BSB on, not really on a stone, but he is perched on one anyway, the model, and he's got the Exploding Handgun of Doom, which is the, let's see, the names of the actual runes, because I just tell people what it does usually rather than name the runes that don't mean anything to people. So it's the Master Rune of Bursting Flame, Rune of Rapid Fire, and Rune of Accuracy. So 2 shots, they always hit on 3s, and they explode into 2d3 hits each. Then on his alleged banner that he's got, which is actually this very fancy helmet, he's got the Master Rune of Grungni, the Ward Save banner, and the Rune of Confusion. So that's going to combo with the hammers, who have the other part of the anti-charge runic combo when we get to them. We've got a unit of 20 Dwarf Warriors with hand weapon and shield. Previously one of the crummiest units in the world, so we'll see if they're good now. They've got a full command and a Rune of Battle, the combat res bonus. 20 Rangers with all the upgrades, throwing axes, great weapons, shields, crossbows, full command, and the Rune of Courage, so no fear or terror checks for them. 10 Thunderers, so those are the 3 core units, the Warriors, the Rangers, and the Thunderers. 10 of those, no upgrades at all. Then we've got 19 in fact, Hammerers, with full command, Rune of Passage, or move through cover, and the banner has a Rune of Battle and the Master Rune of Hesitation to combo with the Thane BSB's banner. So if you charge them in the front, you can't use any of your charge rules, and you don't get an initiative bonus. So people probably won't be charging them in the front, I have a hunch. Then, oh, they're drilled as well, and they're veterans. We've got, then, the potential MVPs of the new era. We've got 10 miners. We'll go into that in a minute. 2 organ guns as well, who haven't seen a battlefield in quite some time, and 1 lonely Doomseeker with no upgrades at all. Just a naked 50-point Doomseeker. Did I even mention the Runesmith? I think I just went straight past him. So we've got a Runesmith down here as well, with full plate, shield, and a great weapon. So no auto-dispel items in the entire list. Right then. What do I expect to be facing, and how has that affected my choices? I expect there to be more core infantry units for a start. Core units because they need to hold objectives. You need core units to hold quite a lot of them. Infantry because of the buff they've had, so I expect more people to lean into infantry. I do expect to see monsters, of course, so we'll see how we do against that, but they're not going to be as devastating, hopefully, as they once were. With that in mind, what is my thinking behind some of these previously unusual choices? So 20 Dwarf Warriors is actually a nice little combat res blob now. So the way challenges have changed is that if, for example, a Chaos Lord on a dragon charges them, the Chaos Lord fights, kills the champion, and let's say does a couple of overkill points, that means that because the champion's now dead, the dragon can't also attack, which is a big deal. So that means you're not getting max overkill. And this blob, not only is it getting all the previous combat res that it used to get, but now it also gets +1 for outnumbering. So it just nudges it in their favour. That's why I've also gone for the Rune of Battle, just to take it even further in my favour. So any kind of monster charging in there might have a difficult time. So they're not going to get kicked away quite as easily. Against elite enemy units, they probably will get through them. But if you charge them, they're going to be on a 3-up save now as well, with the hand weapon and shields. So that's going to be nice for them. And it kind of makes Ironbreakers look like chumps, because you can't improve beyond a 3+ with that parry ability. So Ironbreakers are losing out. So they need something else now, I think, to make them useful. The miners, the thinking there is because of all the objectives about the place, you have to be standing in particular spots to score. And that means we need a bit of speed or mobility, and dwarves don't really do that, except for the 1 gyrocopter. Did I even mention the gyrocopter, by the way? It's just got a steam gun anyway. So, the miners, they're going to try and pop up on the table somewhere where they can score some points, or threaten the enemy baggage train. So they are potentially the cabbage hunters. If anyone leaves a baggage train unguarded, the miners are just going to drop in next to it and hopefully charge it, or, well, not charge it, move into contact with it, and then murder it the next turn. And if people end up guarding their cabbages, then the miners will just find somewhere else to stand where hopefully they can score some points. But they are a fairly cheap little unit there. It's 120 points for 10, so it's not a huge investment. Then, the Stupidity Gun. Stupidity tests could potentially be a big deal now, because if you fail it, you can't just move forward anymore. You have to stand still, can't do spells or anything. So it's way more punishing if you fail it. So with that in mind, I thought now is the time to bring the Stupidity Gun back out. And with accuracy on there, it means, regardless of any modifiers, he's hitting on a 2 and making that unit stupid. We have got Dice in the chat. Good evening. Score out of 10 for the new FAQ. The FAQ combined with the matched play guide. Out of 10, off the top of my head right now, I would go with a solid 8.5, because it's addressed a lot of issues with the game, but not all of them, which we'll get into as we go on. So my core units of the Dwarf Warriors and the Rangers, they're going to be the prime units for scoring me points, because you often need a core unit with a unit strength of either 5 or 10 to accomplish things over the course of the game. The Thunderers I don't trust to do that because there's only 10 of them, but if they get the chance to just sit on an objective and not get killed, maybe they can try that as well. The Hammerers are mostly hoping to deter the enemy from entering somewhere, or more realistically, I want to get into a fight and beat people up, but we'll see how likely that is to happen, because nobody's going to want to charge them in the front, especially with the new infantry rules where an extra rank can fight as well, potentially. Depending which weapons you're using, depends which rules you're going to be able to gain from all this. And I think the extra rank is fine, but you wouldn't get the parry, obviously, if you're using these gigantic hammers, so you wouldn't get the bonus to your save, whereas the Dwarf Warriors would. Organ guns, not a particularly efficient unit, but if we're going to see blocks of infantry that have to sit in one place to score points, if I just aim an organ gun at that place, then maybe they'll get to do some killing. The Anvil of Doom's dispelling ability has gone up significantly, I think, because it's dispelling at +3, and enemy level 4 wizards are now casting at +2 instead of +4, so that is a significant shift towards the Anvil's dispelling abilities there. The Runesmith is still on a +1, which has also got significantly better because all the other casters have come down in their casting bonuses. So dispelling could be something we can do here. And anything else to mention before we dive into the games? I don't think so. The general strategy is going to be get my core units onto objectives to score, try and tempt the enemy into a fight with, for example, the hammerers, and blast them to bits. And we'll see how it goes. Depends on the opposition, though. There are some lists and some builds that I am still not at all confident against. So we'll see if we come up against them. You can have some close-ups of my army, first of all, though. There's the lovely warriors. Classic ye olde organ gun. Runesmith. And the first game is Drawn Battle Lines. So at the TSN and the square-based events, it has been decreed that whichever scenario it is, we use all of the secondary objectives that are listed as potential options down here. So on Drawn Battle Lines, that means there are 3 strategic locations, Domination and the baggage trains. So baggage trains are things that you place yourself, and then over the course of the game you can try and destroy the enemy's baggage train for bonus points, or you can hold on to yours or your opponent's and you can score bonus points at the end, but not as many as if you destroy one. And Domination is table quarters. Having the most unit strength in a table quarter earns you some points, and the more dominant the discrepancy of unit strength is in the quarter, the more points you get. And strategic locations are objectives on the battlefield that are going to give you typically 30 points each turn, each player turn though. So over the course of each player's turn 1 for both players, you get 30 on each, so 60 points in each round. And there is the map, so it's a bit diagonal looking, which poses some problems, because if you start deploying down this end, suddenly any unit that's, for example, forced to fall back in good order is in peril of touching the edge very early. So maybe people would avoid that. And as I mentioned, it's against Grand Cathay. So at the TSN, Mr. Toby has had this army ready for a couple of months now. None of them are the actual GW Cathay models because obviously they weren't released yet. I think they're all 3D prints. But he's had them ready and raring to go as soon as Cathay hit. He's just been using them as Empire. We've got Gilfoss in the chat. Good evening. So, if we see here, the reason for my deployment not being anywhere near that bottom corner there is because the enemy has 3 sources of wind blast. So, I do not want to be pushed off the table, so no one is going near the edge. And got miners off there. Gyrocopter out on the right. Doomseeker. Rangers a bit further forward on an objective, so they can start scoring immediately. Lovely cinematic shot looking at the dragon. And let's go into my opponent's list, shall we? There are some close-up images of this army of my opponents later on, by the way, as I took pictures of all the armies. So, let's pull up that list and go through it here. Because it's brand new. So we have the Storm Dragon, Meow. Is it pronounced Meow? Someone let me know. Anyone who's familiar with Chinese pronunciations. Miao Ying, the Storm Dragon, 485 points. So, starting in dragon form, she has very unusual rules where if you kill the dragon form, she can turn into a human. She can turn back and forth and heal. As a human, she has lots of spells. As a dragon, obviously, she can kick people's butts. So, that is the general. There is then, let's see, there are 2 gatekeepers that are going to be around here somewhere in some of the units. They have celestial blades and spirit lanterns. So magical weapons, they've got that. There is a strategist as well with the alchemist's mask out there somewhere as well. Then in the core, so for scoring objectives, there's a unit of 24 Jade Warriors with full command. They are drilled and they have a war banner. Then there's another unit of 16 Jade Warriors, so slightly smaller, so I think that's that one there. And then there is another unit of 16 with halberds, which will be these ones here. So a big unit there, and then 2 smaller units. So they're all Jade Warriors, standard infantry. However, what's not so standard is all this artillery. There are 2 cannons, so 2 Cathayan Grand Cannons, and 2 Fire Rain rocket batteries. So the rocket batteries, it's hard to tell from this picture, but when we get some closer shots in a minute, the 2 that have more like elaborate dragon heads on them are the rocket batteries, and the 2 more basic looking heads are the cannons, and they have ogre loaders as well, which are like an extra crew who's extra tough, and he lets them do, does he let them do a reroll? And also once per game a cannon can shoot twice, I know as well. Then what else have we got? 2 Cathayan Jade Sentinels, so the 2 big giants. They are spellcasters as well, which is why they've got Wind Blast. And the reason there's 4 Wind Blast is because Mao Ying can cast 2 Wind Blasts in a turn, apparently. So as soon as I heard that, I thought, nope, not going anywhere near the edge. Let's see, Lambo says, I think a choice of once per game, either a reroll or shoot twice. That would make sense. So there are a few ogre loaders scattered around, which are represented by these big, like, dragon lion things. And there's a panda as well, representing one of them. So, artillery that's better than mine. So I don't expect the organ guns to last beyond turn 1, because cannons will probably aim straight for them and take them out in one hit. On average, most cannons take 1 shot to kill a war machine, unlike dwarf cannons that on average take 2 shots to kill a war machine. So, miners hiding in the mine tunnels, gyrocopter out on the right. Turn 1, and I'm going first. So, I've got an objective under here, so I'm just going to be racking up points for the Rangers being on that. The organ gun immediately opens fire into the Jade Sentinel. I think most people seem to be counting wounds up, and I think they have 6 in total, so I've done 2 wounds there. Then the gyrocopter moves forward and drops a template to no effect at all onto some of the Jade Warriors. Does nothing, as you can tell by the thumbs down. The other organ gun and the Thunderers and my handgun Thane of Doom open fire and kill a few Jade Warriors from a different unit. And you can see with this token here that my anvil has got reroll armor saves onto the hammers for the turn. You can see the runesmith isn't in this unit, so I've got my BSB and my king in with the hammerers, because I want to combo the BSB and the standard bearer for the anti-charge effects, and I want the king in there so he can just beat everyone up. And it makes it a bit of an expensive Death Star, so if the enemy don't deal with it, there's a limit to how many points they can take off me. Now, I'm not really contesting these 2 objectives at all. I don't want to spread myself too thin just to get 30 points a turn and get surrounded and murdered. So I'm mostly kind of embedded on this side of the table. I've also spread out my war machines quite a bit, in case there's any kind of horrible dragon, but look at the size of that base. There's only so much you can do to avoid that. So, into the enemy turn, and the gyrocopter flees from the enemy charge, as it should. And Mao Ying, the Dragon of Doom, charges into the Doomseeker. Because if you look where the Doomseeker is, right there, I think it was the only thing that was in charge range. The gyrocopter's out of the charge arc. So, charge the Doomseeker. And because I've not really planned this out very well, she can actually overrun directly into the Thunderers. All I had to do was put the Doomseeker like an inch to the right, and it would have been fine. But because of that gigantic base, and you don't need to be centered, you just have to stop there. So look at that, it's going to hit the Thunderers. So all he had to do was be there, and it would have been fine. So actually overrunning is one of the things I don't like about Old World, for the record. I don't know if I've mentioned this in the past, but I think it makes chaff almost useless a lot of the time. Because if you're trying to screen your advance and stay behind your other troops, often something will just charge in, kill the chaff unit that you've put in front, then overrun into the unit you were trying to protect and count as charging on the next turn. So I think chaff is way less useful because of the power and the vast distances achieved by overrunning. So, yes, this is turn 1 for Cathay, but we're still on. So there's that flight. The Sentinel is mostly hanging back, but does wind blast the Rangers a bit and does some damage there. They're being shot at. I've got Ruth in the chat as well. Good evening. And you can see 4 Rangers have been killed by enemy shooting and spellcasting so far. So you can see the cannons here. The very hairy dragons are the rockets, and the slightly less hairy ones are the cannons. And this is the enemy baggage train, by the way. So I'm not confident of getting to that because I can't bring the miners in there because all the cannons are surrounding it and I have to be 8 inches away from the enemy. And organ gun down from cannon fire immediately, as expected. Rocket battery misfires but doesn't explode, which is handy. Roll the initiative says chaff is for first charge. Yes, there are units in the game that have abilities the first time they charge. So in those instances, chaff is potentially important. But in general, in terms of trying to engineer who gets to charge, if you're faster, then you just usually can charge and there's nothing the enemy can really do about it. Because if you try to screen your advance, like I was saying, they just charge through the screen and into the next unit. And if you try to be clever and think, well, what about 2 screens? So I put the first one down, they overrun into the next one, and that way I can then charge them because they're locked in that position. Oftentimes, when that happens, they'll end up in they'll be able to engineer a position where you can't charge past your own unit anyway, so you wouldn't be able to join in the fight. And if you've set up the angles perfectly, they just would restrain and not overrun in the first place. So I think chaff is limited because of overrunning still. Penguin says you have to flee as a charge reaction with your chaff, allowing you to then charge when they're stranded in the middle of the board. Also, potential strategy, but the kind of fast stuff I'm talking about advancing on trying to block would generally redirect into the unit that you were trying to shepherd up the board in the first place and still have plenty of movement to do it and be safe. We're talking about like dwarves walking up trying to get an engagement with the enemy on their terms here. So there are things you can do, as people have mentioned, but I think it's still too limited. I think overrun is very powerful. So you see where the cannons have dropped here. They also cause an impact where the cannonball lands, reducing movement of nearby units and also taking away swift stride, which is quite a significant effect. So at least one of the cannons has fired twice this turn, because you can see there's 3 impacts. This one has misfired as well, but has not blown up. And Mao Ying overruns through the Doomseeker straight into the Thunderers, which is not very nice. Doomseeker dies, and the death blow does nothing, as usual. So I'm keeping track of the extra victory points scored here for being on objectives. And at this point, the Dwarves have got 60 because I started the game on an objective, and Cathay have got 30. So if we go back and look, these Jade Warriors have moved up onto an objective there. This one is untouched by anybody, and I've got my Rangers out on the left on that objective. So I've got the slight edge there. We'll be building up points over the course of the game, which will then be adding to our totals. And then adding them to the points for controlling table quarters and so on. So, my turn 2. I buff the armour of the Rangers, thinking that maybe they're going to get shot again next turn with the anvil. And then, what's this? This is the Engineer's Stupidity Gun. He was too far away to use it last turn, but I've moved into range, shot the Jade Sentinel, and using this little dice here to represent when a unit has become stupid as a result of the Stupidity Gun from the Engineer. So, if this thing was thinking about moving forwards, maybe it'll think twice. You can see it's also taken some more wounds, so it's almost actually dead, this one now. Gyrocopter moves into position outside of the charge arc of the Jade Warriors, getting ready to flame them again, just ready to irritate them. And Mao Ying obviously devours the Thunderers, who then flee. There's only 2 left. She chooses to restrain and then turn round and face the rest of my army. It would obviously be a big risk going into the Hammerers. In fact, I would say probably don't want to do that, even in the flank, because best case scenario, you either get into a challenge and kill a character, or you kill a few Hammerers, and then they're stubborn. So you're not going to take them in one round, and then they're going to be able to turn around and fight you, and That's not something you want to be doing, I think. The king is quite dangerous. With toughness 10, even a big dragon would struggle to wound him. And there's decent combat res in there. I've got a Rune of Battle on the banner. And there's a BSB in there as well, so some nice bonuses. Now, if you're running infantry this wide, you're only going to get a benefit now if the enemy are also wide. So Linehammer is officially dead because, well, it's on life support. Because you can only attack from within your movement range if you're not in base contact. So for dwarves, that's very little. So the wider you are, unless the enemy is also very wide, you're not going to be attacking with too many models. So really, you want to be getting a bit of a rank bonus. The reason the hammerers are this wide is because I've seen, first of all, the width of this dragon is actually quite big. So I don't mind being too wide there. And there is also some wide enemy presence around here as well. These two units are fairly wide. So I wouldn't be missing out on too many attacks if I end up fighting those. Also, if you're fighting just one thing like a dragon, you'll be most likely in a challenge anyway. So most of the guys won't be able to fight, so you would want the extra combat res from having an extra rank. So in general, you'll see infantry units more like this, I think, in this new age of the matched play guide. Dice says you could use the miner's cart as dwarf baggage so you get many spare cart models in the box. I'm actually working on my baggage train or cabbage train at the moment, and it does actually have cabbage on it. I couldn't finish painting it this week because it's been too warm in my painting area to actually turn on the painting lamp and sit there and paint. So hopefully we've got a few days of major heat coming later in the week, but maybe I'll be able to squeeze in some painting. So more points being built up there. And the engineer flees from the charge of Mao Ying, who also tried to charge the organ gun. The organ gun fled. Mao Ying then redirected, I think, into the engineer and didn't catch the engineer either. And because of the distance, rolled, you now can't see the anvil. Because technically its base isn't part of the model, that's just something I use so I can pick it up and not chip the paint off. The anvil doesn't actually come with a base size listed, so it's just the size of the model. And I'm not sure whether it'd be able to see the base anyway, possibly. But the base doesn't count on the anvil anyway. So it can't see the anvil, could potentially go after any of my units around here though, which is quite scary. Now, you could call it a benefit that a dragon like this has, that doesn't technically have a rider, is that in a challenge, you're not going to be missing out on loads of attacks because the beast hasn't got to strike yet because the rider accidentally kills the unit champion and doesn't get much overkill, which is what happens now. You do miss out on the attacks from the mount if the rider is going first and kills the unit champion, for instance. So, turn 3 for the enemy. What's Mao Ying going to do? The Jade Sentinel charges my gyrocopter, who flees again. Why would a gyrocopter want to be in combat? It wouldn't, so we're just going to keep running away. Mao Ying charges... Let's see. Yes, I took pictures of that prematurely before the dice, I think. Because obviously she's charging on her own turn, which is now. So Mao Ying charging in. Engineer, pretty safe though. Cannons firing off. Lands. Doesn't do much, but this one actually does. This cannon landed directly on the poor BSB, who failed a lookout, sir. And then I forgot that I'd given him a reroll armor save as well, but it would have required a 6, so very unlikely. So the BSB is dead from a cannonball and failing a lookout, sir, which means no more ward save for this unit, which means victory points for the enemy. Wow, wow, wow. We have Becky in the chat who's very pleased to see dwarves are back. Yeah, we've got to try out dwarves in this new matched play guide era. The Sentinel passed its stupidity test and moves a little bit. And we can see some shoes in this shot. There's definitely not mine though. And you can see I've got lots of fleeing units. Lots of things that were fleeing from charges. And it is now my turn 4. So I've got one chance to maybe shoot down this dragon with something. A lot of the units that can shoot are fleeing, so the organ gun won't be able to shoot. And how concerned should I be with this dragon? What I'm going to do is attack it with whatever I've got that can't attack anything else, because why not? But also, I'm going to turn my infantry towards it and try and angle the rangers in such a way that they can't be charged by the dragon. Let's see if we can pull that off. So, the organ gun rallies but can't do much. The warriors turn round, and I've angled my other units so the dragon wouldn't be able to be placed in position to charge the rangers, I think was the goal there. I'm not sure if you can really tell from this angle though. Or maybe I changed my mind and just allowed it. The hammerers advance on the enemy, but they're going very slowly because the cannon keeps landing next to them, so they're having their movement reduced each time. And the anvil is finding it harder to get spells off now as well, now that the casting bonus has come down. Gyrocopter gets in front of the Jade Warriors again, gives them a bit of a toasting. The Rangers blast away and shoot the Jade Sentinel that was hanging out there, and it's dead now, so there's some good points. Got a dead Sentinel. And so, let's have a look here. So the goal here was that the dragon wouldn't be able to charge the Rangers. I think maybe we just couldn't put the unit in the right place or something, because I remember discussing it with my opponent during the game, that with the angles of the units, then there wouldn't be space for the dragon to charge the Rangers. Here it looks like there is space, but I'm pretty sure we'd set it up so that it would not be possible. So maybe this unit that was overhanging the tray is slid back, perhaps, because you can see they're slightly off the ground there. But I remember we definitely had a discussion about whether this charge was blocked or not. Okay, so Dwarf's still up on victory points for now. The Gyrocopter is obviously running away from a charge yet again, doesn't get caught. This Gyrocopter is causing mischief, and I'm enjoying the Gyrocopter actually, because my thinking with that unit now, previously a lot of things would be castled because there's no incentive to go out because there was nothing to score out in the middle of the battlefield. So if they thought you had annoying harassment units, they would just hide and castle and protect each other. Now you have to actually advance into the battlefield if you want to score, so there are going to be more vulnerable units left exposed for things like Gyrocopters to chase after. And the kind of units that are core and want to be holding these objectives aren't going to be like your mega fighter units necessarily. So the Gyrocopter can just gently harass them and maybe kill some of them, and if they eventually decide to start chasing it, then that's a bonus. So the dragon into the Dwarf Warriors, initially charging the engineer who fled and then redirecting into the Dwarf Warriors. So I'm actually fairly confident about this fight because I've got good static combat res here, and charging into the front means I've got a 3-up save now. All the dragon's attacks are -2, so I'll be on a 5+ save on all the attacks that come in, which feels significant compared to having little to no save. So there's not much going on over on the enemy war machine front, but I am actually taking some crew off by shooting at them occasionally. And they're also losing crew from misfires as well, which is why they're not up to their full complement at the moment. And into the enemy turn. Means we're still in the enemy turn. Misfire here. So, the champion of the Dwarf Warriors gets killed in the challenge. However, I still win the combat, because not many wounds get through. So, Mao Ying falls back in good order. I choose not to pursue, because I don't want to be stuck in combat when it's my turn next, when I could be shooting the dragon instead. So, into my turn 5. And, okay, this is the kind of position that I was thinking of here. This is the time where I've actually got it locked down, because if we go back and look at this situation, so the flank of the Rangers may have been exposed here. Let's go back. So there. The issue is, okay, I think I remember this bit now. Because blocking off the charge from the dragon definitely happens where we're up to now. Here, it was blocked kind of because hitting the Rangers means that you'd be following up into the Dwarf Warriors, which wasn't very appetizing, because I would be probably falling back in good order. I could then reform, turn round, and you'd still be fighting the Dwarf Warriors. So just giving the Rangers a free spin round when you could just go straight into the meat of the matter and get straight to the Warriors, was the thinking there. And now if we go forward, you can see that now I've actually blocked up that gap. There we go. So with the angles involved, the Rangers now can't be charged. And these guys have still got a runesmith in there, which is important because I've lost the champion, but I've still got someone capable of accepting a challenge or issuing a challenge if it can pass a leadership test, because Mao Ying has some challenge mitigation. You can't always necessarily challenge her, which is potentially annoying. And my hammerers have turned around now in case she was thinking about charging them in the rear. So clearly she's not going to charge into the hammerers. That would be a terrible idea. Gyrocopter does more toasting into the Jade Warriors, slowly whittling them down. And Mao Ying is also made stupid by the handgun of stupidity. So still up on points there for objectives, still scoring nicely. And enemy turn 5, so we're going to have the charge. We're going to have the dragon passing the stupidity test. Another gyrocopter fleeing moment again from the Jade Warriors. Mao Ying back into the Warriors, who no longer have a champion, they only have a runesmith for the challenge. But you can see here that I've given my dwarves reroll armor saves with the anvil now, because I was no longer in combat, so I was able to target the unit with the buff. Which means that against all of Mao Ying's attacks, they're going to be on 5+ rerolling. With the parry, since they haven't charged. So that's another reason you don't necessarily want to follow up into the enemy when they fall back in good order, because you would then count as charging in the next turn and you'd lose your parry and you'd lose your extra ranks and all that good stuff. So you can see these Jade Warriors are suddenly feeling very brave because the hammerers have turned round to face the other way. How weird. Oh, by the way, you can see my miners have come on, but there's nothing for them to do. All they can do is contest this table quarter, because they're too far away from the enemy war machines to do anything, and if they pop down right next to the cannon, they're just going to have the Cathay version of the grape shot to the face, and they'll all die immediately. So all they're doing is just hanging out over there. And what's this? The dragon loses combat, so the runesmith actually failed to issue a challenge after failing the leadership test. But with my reroll 5+ saves, I only lost a couple of dwarves in combat, and I actually won the combat. Mao Ying failed her leadership test, fled. Oh, she killed 4, there you go. Failed the leadership test because I won combat. I pursued 10 inches and ran down the dragon. What do you think about that? Dwarf warriors, basic dwarf warriors, not even in a challenge situation, scaring the fabled storm dragon. She runs away, and because she has been cut down and it just says the model or the unit is removed from play, she's not reduced to her last wound, she's just removed from play. That means that she can't turn into human form, so he's just dead. Swab says, what is that golden marker thing? So this is the token I use for the anvil's buffs. If it's on the skull side, then it means that the unit has reroll armor saves. If it's on the other side, which is more swirly, it means that it has the enhanced version, which is reroll armor saves and +1 to armor saves. So I just use that, because it's the only buff I really have that I need a token for, so I just use that. It's from the old Warhammer Fantasy golden token and combat resolution marker set. So, we've now killed a dragon, because she was so terrified of ranks of dwarves. The large marker thingy. Oh, this thing. This is the combat resolution counter. So this is from the same set. So, mark your combat resolution with these little pins down here. It's very fancy. So you got to get this out in every game. I don't think this particular one is available anymore. You might be able to find it on eBay, but I'm sure someone will have made knockoffs by now. There's probably some really nice, maybe on Etsy, somewhere like that, someone will have made some. That's where the charge and flee markers are from as well, from that same set. So they're very cool. So, big dragon, 485 point dragon, the new model that's not even been released yet, is dead. Bob says, is it GW official? But these tokens are GW official. They were released by GW, these ones, yes. But they're not available anymore. if you're asking about any of the Cathay models, all of these are 3D printed because they've been ready since before the launch of Cathay. So that has put a cat amongst the Cathayan pigeons, hasn't it? Taken out the dragon, taken out the sentinel. I've actually got a good number of kill points now. So let's see what else we can score. I'm also kind of backed into this corner, so for domination points, the enemy are going to score some good points for this half of the table. It's 200 points if you control an area uncontested. It's 100 if you have more unit strength than there, 150 if you have double. So, in my turn 6, I make another sentinel stupid with the Rune of Concussive Force on the handgun. Gyrocopter tries to do more toasting of Jade Warriors, but only knocks them down to 5 models. And everyone else just turns around ready to accept any charges. I do not mind at all being charged in the flank by a giant, because the hammerers pretty much are invincible on turn 6 if they haven't fought yet, because they're stubborn, and you're clearly not going to kill all of them in one go. So, end of that, still racking up points, but my opponent has now moved on to this objective as well to get a few more. And what's this? Cannon fire. Takes out the gyrocopter. Yep, that was turn 6. So other than that, not much going on. A couple of miners get shot. And that is about it. So when we work out the points, it turns out there is very little in it. So if we look at this next picture here, you can see these are the score sheets now. So hopefully someone comes out with an app for old world scoring, because there's a lot of stuff to keep track of now. Because you're killing things, you get points if you've almost killed a unit, you get points if they're fleeing, you get points for controlling special features, baggage trains destroyed, domination, table quarters, strategic locations, and the points for holding them over the course of the game. So there's a lot to add up, so it'd be very convenient if someone made an app for this scoring, so hopefully someone's already on that. And you can see, I'm the opponent in this one, by the way. So you can see there's not much difference at all. There's 28 points difference between us. So that's clearly a draw. And the victory threshold at this event is 400 points, by the way. So unless you score 400 points more than the enemy, it's a draw. So that encourages you to get out there and score points as much as possible and be aggressive. You can't just sit back and hope a cannon blows up and get a small win. You have to actually get out there and score things yourself. So, clearly a draw. You can't get much more of a draw than that. Tiny margin between the two sides. And if we look at it, if the big dragon hadn't died, that would obviously be a big deal. If my BSB hadn't had a cannon dropped on it and I rolled a 1 on the Lookout Sir, that would have also swung it big time as well. And other than that, the Cathay forces scored more points than me for domination, for holding this entire side of the table uncontested. There was 400 points between these two quarters, and these two were contested, but I think I held both of them in a contested way, so I held less points there for domination. Okay, next game. Ruth says, did you say the dreaded anything but a 1 to save him? I don't know if I did say that, but there's usually some discussion of that when there's a Lookout Sir. Usually like, don't roll a 1 and then throw the dice. In this occasion, it was a 1, and then failed my armor save as well against the cannonball, and died. So, also, anything that has 2 wounds, most cannonballs in the game, if they wound and get through the armor, auto-kill them, because you can't get less than 2 damage. The Dwarf cannon, however, with its lame-o D3 damage instead of D3 plus 1, means that the Dwarf cannon can actually fail to kill something that has 2 wounds. So yet another reason the Dwarven cannon is garbage. For some reason it's the only cannon in the game, other than one mounted on a steam tank, which makes sense. It should be a little more rickety. The Dwarf cannon is the only one that has flat D3 damage instead of D3 plus 1. And if this is because it's a small, kind of dwarven, more precision-engineered mobile cannon, you would expect that to be reflected in it being much cheaper than the other cannons, which it isn't. You would expect that to be reflected in the runes you could put on it being cost-effective and making it more powerful, preferably more powerful than all the other cannons in the game, because it's dwarven engineering. They're supposed to be the engineers of the world. but by the time you've ruined up the cannon so that it's comparable to other cannons, it's vastly more expensive than them, and still only does flat D3 damage anyway. So it doesn't matter how much you tool it up. The only benefit really to a Dwarven cannon over other ones is the engineers can help it, but some other factions have that as well, and the fact that you can upgrade them with runes to make them magical in case you want to shoot a cannon at something ethereal, which is very rare. So in case you want to shoot a cannon at the Green Knight, the Dwarven is the way to go, but even then you might still just do one wound to it. And I will happily grumble in a Dwarven fashion about cannons for several hours. Okay, next one, a chance encounter. So, it's not as weird as it looks, the deployment. So whoever wins the roll-off picks either zone A1 or... Well, they just pick one of them, and then the other player will then take the one that's diagonally opposite them. So if you pick B1, enemy gets B2, you pick A1, enemy gets A2. And we're using, by the way, the square-based terrain layout maps. So this one has a secondary objective, may include domination and the baggage train. So we also have a special feature in the middle as well. So you can see a baggage train down there, and there's one there. And obviously I'm way out of my deployment zone here because these are the rangers. And I'm up against Wood Elves, which is the same army that I played my practice game against on Thursday with my Chaos Warriors. Pretty much the same list, so I'll crack it open now and go through that in more detail. So, miners hiding off the table. They don't actually have a champion, by the way. This guy's just in there because he looks cool. Organ gun in the woods. What's it doing there? So, if we look at this situation here, the Wood Elves have a spell that allows them to teleport characters from one wood into another. And there's a special wood been placed there near my deployment zone. So I've put an organ gun in the centre of my deployment zone woods to make sure nothing can teleport in there. And it's the one unit that I felt comfortable doing that with, because I didn't really want to use an infantry unit, for example, because they want to be out there scoring, and if the enemy are going to attack me, they're going to be pushing in this direction anyway. So if they ever end up out of combat, I'll then be able to shoot them from within the woods. So just stopping them teleporting over here, basically. There's my baggage train, with a line of thunderers in front of it, and an organ gun behind. The reason I'm confident putting my shooting units behind each other is because the enemy have a vast amount of large targets, which I'll get to in a moment. The warriors don't want to get flanked, so they're just hugging this piece of terrain, and the hammerers have formed a nice big block this way. They're going to push straight towards the enemy through the woods. They don't care about that because they've got the rune of passage, so they don't suffer any reduced movement for going through the terrain. Swab says, is Linehammer dead? It's definitely dead-ish. If both people run massive lines of troops, then it's great because everyone can still fight. If only one person does it, then a lot of your guys aren't going to be able to fight unless you've got a very high movement stat. So the higher your movement stat, the longer a line you can run and still be allowed to attack. So it may be dead for dwarves, because you really want that combat res now. So you want to go into ranks as much as possible to boost that res. We have, in the enemy list, we've got a Glade Lord on Forest Dragon with Talisman of Protection, Moonstone of the Hidden Ways, and Annoyance of Nettlings, so it's going to be hard to hit in a challenge. It's got a ward save, and it's pretty tough. 499 points, so just inside the character limit for this event, which was 500 points. Even though it's 2,600 points, it's been decreed. The square-based events character limits for each character, or for each unit, in fact, is still 500. Swab says, Hammerers, I was thinking of running a large block of them. I don't really think Hammerers are going to be an optimal choice. Not because they're bad, they're actually very good. But you have to build a list around getting them into combat. Because if you don't get them into combat, that's a lot of points there that aren't really equipped to move around and defend the rest of your army that's going to get killed, because everything else is so squishy. Martin says, have I missed our game? This is only game 2 I'm on here. So, we've only had one game so far. We have got... What else? We've got Orion, who's... Where's Orion hiding? There's Orion with the ethereal doggos. So, Orion has the big horn there, of course. Orion is 455 points. There is a Treeman Ancient, which is this one here. These are all very nicely painted AOS models that have been rebased for the old world as dryads and trees. We've got... what else have we got in characters other than the Tree Man Ancient with battle magic? I think that's it for the 3 characters there. Then there's 5 Eternal Guard because they're compulsory. So anytime you're playing Wood Elves and you see a unit of 5 models, you don't have to ask what it is. You know it's the minimum amount of Eternal Guard because they have to be taken. So people who don't like them just take 5 because you have to. So imagine being a renowned member of the Eternal Guard in the Wood Elf ranks. There's only 5 of you in the village, and every time there's a battle, the general comes by, knocks on the door. Right, come on then, I don't really want to bring you to the fight, but I guess I have to. And all 5 of you march up like, no one likes us, but I guess we still have to be here because it's the law. Everyone like gives them sideways glances. It just wouldn't be a very fun existence, would it, being like shunned like that? Only in there because you're compulsory. Very sad. Then we've got 2 units of 23 dryads. So each one of those is 304 points. Those are some big beefy units. Then there are 4 treekin who are in ambush right now. And then there are 2 tree men who are on either side of the corner of this building. So, you may notice, by the way, that for this game, if we go back to this shot here, I've put my runesmith in with the hammerers. What is that going to mean for the enemy? Well, you may know that the runesmith grants magical flaming attacks to a unit. Well, not magical. Hammerers already have magical attacks, but flaming attacks to the unit he's in. And what do flaming attacks do against trees and dryads? Turn off their regeneration because they're goddamn trees. So, the hammerers are like the ultimate death machine for these wood elves, so that's why the runesmiths in there, they're going to go straight to the enemy and just try and obliterate them with flaming hammers, which is what you need to bring down a tree apparently. Not an axe, just a hammer that's been set on fire. Okay, Doomseeker staring straight down the barrel of the enemy. Now, the Doomseeker on the mercenary table, usually it doesn't have any effect, it being a mercenary, because you don't roll a 1, so you don't have to roll on the table to see what happens. However, when you do fail, and then you find out that the mercenary is a reluctant mercenary who's kind of dragging his feet and is now on -1 movement, so you've now got a Doomseeker who's movement 2. It's not quite so powerful, and I think that may have been what happened in this game. It's either this game or the next one anyway, but it's hard to tell with the Doomseeker because they're so slow and they just walk towards the enemy until someone attacks them and then they die, usually. So let's find out what happens here. I'm actually moving, but the organ gun that had a line of sight on one of the tree men does some wounds to it, 3 by the looks of it, because I could already see it. Now the issue with taking large targets is that even if you're mostly hidden behind a building, it doesn't matter because you can never benefit from cover because you're a large target. So, that's the downside of bringing big monsters. You can see I'm not being too aggressive here, just standing back, shooting. If the wood elves want to advance towards me, I'll shoot them to bits. And they're not going to be teleporting into my woods because I've got an organ gun sitting there. And feeling pretty good so far, so let's see how it continues. Turn 1 for the enemy. You can see that we replaced the woods with these markers because I was trampling through the lovely wood elf forest. A vortex has been dropped down there, and you can see the wood elf dragon bypassing the hammerers, and because the the Glade Lord is now out of my charge arc, it means I can't then use drill to expand and then charge, because you can only charge something that you can see prior to using drilled. The only way this unit now could have been charged is if the enemy foolishly tried to shoot me somehow, and I ended up falling back in good order, and then got the dragon in my charge arc. Everyone else is taking a bit of shelter behind this building. Turn 2 for me, so I'm going to completely ignore the dragon, just thrust forward as fast as possible, hoping the anvil can convey the hammerers as well, get close to the enemy, and just rushing straight forward, trying to kill things by the end. The miners have also come on this turn, a bit too early for my liking, because I would prefer it to be later when the battlefield's opened up a bit and I can pick where to put them for scoring purposes. Bob says, could the Lord charge out by himself? No, you can't charge out of a unit. So, If you want to charge the next turn, you could pile out of the unit. And you can see that I'm not going to be able to fit past this building, but the unit is drilled, so if I want to charge or move past it, I can just remove this rank to the back. The gyrocopter is not too interesting in going forward. With that steam gun, what's it going to do? Kill a dryad and then get charged? Not really worth doing, so I'm just going to hang back and stay alive and then maybe use it to contest a table quarter at the end of the game if possible. Dice says, nice use of AOS Sylvaneth models. Yes, it is very nice. Very stylish Wood Elf army. Most Wood Elf armies tend to be stylish, usually. So, turn 2 for the Wood Elves. The dragon is now staring at my organ gun, staying out of sight of this organ gun, I think, but not the anvil, so I'm going to have 2 potential things to target the dragon with. But I'm just ignoring the dragon mainly, because hammers aren't going to chase it down. And a vortex has been recast in front of the enemy here, so that if I charge, I'm going to have to be using the lowest dice to charge through this difficult terrain vortex, unless I can shut it down with my runesmith before then. So the enemy are kind of castling up here, which, looking at this, I don't see how I'm really going to lose the game, because the enemy are really just in one spot. So unless they come out at some point, then it's going to be slightly in my favour, I think. If I've got board domination, I'm going to be getting lots of points at the end of the game. And there's a special feature here as well. So we'll see if the enemies start to push out. My turn 3. The hammerers go forward again. And you can see they're right up to the enemy now, so maybe able to charge next turn. Organ gun and the anvil take aim at the dragon and do 3 wounds, which is a good start. And the rest of my shooting piles into whatever it can see, like this tree man, but doesn't do much this turn. The Doomseeker is hiding behind this wall. Well, I say hiding, but not really, because the tree man can still see it. But I wouldn't mind that at all. If the tree man charges the Doomseeker, I get a free death for my Doomseeker, which is great. And then the overrun distance to reach one of my units would be vast. So I'm pretty confident the tree man would get stuck in no man's land. Dragon charges into the organ gun, as you'd expect. And then, yeah, this is into the enemy turn, obviously. So the tree man does charge the Doomseeker. And then Orion is teleported. You can see a human hand there, placing Orion into the woods. Who's just hanging out behind my lines now, and also potentially contesting this table quarter later in the game, so I'm not going to bother trying to chase him down. And you can see the tree man here has moved forwards, and the dryads have moved back. The idea being that I would have to charge the tree man rather than the dryads. Now I am drilled, so I could shrink my unit and charge through, but it's going to be difficult to charge the dryads because of that vortex right there, so it depends if I manage to dispel it first. Otherwise I might just settle for charging the tree man. So the organ gun gets killed by the dragon, obviously. And it then overruns off the table, because it didn't want to stay there and get shot with another organ gun and the anvil. So it decided to overrun, reaches the edge, and goes off the table. The tree man kills the Doomseeker, only overruns a few inches, and is now standing there waiting to get shot. So let's see if I can kill that next turn. I'm going to do everything I can to bring down this tree man. I've got my entire army shooting at it, so hopefully. My turn 4. So, the hammer has charged into the tree man, defeated it in combat, it fled, they then overran into the dryads. So when hammers charge, they are not as effective, because they don't have as many attacks, they can't fight in as many ranks, and that's about it. So hammers don't really want to be charging. The problem is no one in the right mind is going to charge them, because you know you're giving them double attacks when you charge them, the front rank anyway. And you're boosting their initiative, and I've got all the anti-charge tech on my banners, so you're not even doing impact hits, you can't use lances or like flail bonuses or anything that's on the charge. You only get... You're probably going to be striking last unless you've got very high initiative, because you're buffing the hammers up to 4 by charging them, and then you're not getting your initiative bonus for the charge. So no one's ever going to charge hammers, unless they're insane or very confident for some reason. So, hammers having to charge a lot means some of their rules are kind of pointless. That was the combat resolution there. So, You can see the organ gun rolled a 2 and a misfire, so that's not going to be contributing much this turn. The stupidity gun does make the tree man stupid, as you can see, and I did 1 wound with all my thunderers and the organ gun, and the rangers, and the anvil of doom. So all of that just does 1 wound, so it's still on 2 wounds, so I'm still confident I'll kill it by the end, but it might take something down with it, which would be very sad. Poor anvil, poor organ gun on this occasion. So the engineer would have helped to re-roll that, but I just re-rolled and got a misfire. I think I rolled 2 2s, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to risk it, I'll roll it again, and then it turned into a misfire, got even worse. So stupid tree man, we'll see if it passes the test next turn, and whether the stupidity gun is going to pay off finally. Turn 4 for the enemy, tree man into the thunderers, takes 1 wound from the stand and shoot, so there's 1 for my combat res. And you can see I've positioned my units in such a way that hopefully they're not going to get hit by just endless overruns, but you never know. It's difficult to factor in everything in this game though, because the direction of overrun is very weird. Now this unit doesn't have a command, so technically that doesn't need to stay in the middle. So by my reckon I can peel off models purely from that end, which is what I would rather do, because it would make the overrun go this way instead of this way where it could hit an engineer or an organ gun. I don't mind if it hits the warriors. We've seen that the dwarf warriors can stand up to something more powerful than a tree man already, just on combat res. Vortex behind the hammerers now, because they've charged through it, took the hits. Oh well, it wasn't so much a charge as an overrun last turn. The Tree Lord Ancient is now facing into the flank of the hammerers, in case they're still there, otherwise it can go and hunt the miners. And you can see that the dragon has come back onto the table and is hiding behind the woods, but in a position where it can still see the anvil, but the organ gun can't see it, which is obviously important. I've got my gyrocopter hanging out down on the baggage train because the enemies still have the treekin in ambush, so I don't want them ambushing right next to my baggage train. The tree man kills a few thunderers, they fall back in good order, he overruns into the engineer. Swab says, how much of the new rules change the game now? Most of the time it's a totally different game now. Blocks of infantry can now stand up to a dragon single-handedly, which is wild considering how the game used to be. And the objective scoring makes core units very useful suddenly as well. So some armies may want to go beyond the minimum in their core, potentially, to get more units that can score points, especially if you've got good core. So, who's got really good core? Goblins can take night goblins with fanatics in there, really good core, but they're also very cheap, so maybe you don't need to fill out your core with them. So who's got good core that would want to go above the minimum? Vampire counts, maybe? You might want to take 1 billion skeletons or something. You could take lots of units. Dwarves have good core in that you can take longbeards or rangers, but because you can't have a single unit over 500 points, you can't take a mega 50 model Death Star of them. So yeah, I like most of the changes. Magic has been toned down. Okay, in the fight here, we've got a fallback in good order, or it may have been a give ground. Either way, the Dryads have fallen back after taking casualties, and the Hammerers are following them, so now out of the charge arc of the Tree Lord Ancient and the Tree Man, which is important. So, turn 5 for me. The Engineer is obviously dead, and the Tree Man in my turn. The Tree Man decides not to overrun into the Thunderers, I think, because everyone else got out the way, so an overrun there would just leave him out in no man's land. So instead turns round, I think. It's going to be the enemy turn next, so can charge something else. And in fact, faces into the Dwarf Warriors, because they're a core unit that's holding a special feature, so at the end of the game they will be getting some points at this stage. Saurus says, Brett Yeoman Guard, since you only want 2 units of 3 Pegasus Knights. Now, Pegasus Knights did go up in points. The 500 point limit. So, I think the limit is officially 25% of your army's points on a single unit. But at the square-based TSN events, then it's been decreed that that extends beyond 2,000 point games. So there's still a 500 point limit, even at 2,600 points. So that part of it is kind of the house ruling of the square-based system. So, We have another fallback in good order from the Dryads, but the Hammerers do not get anywhere near catching up with them. And there we are, so chasing them into the corner. By the way, these Treekin have still not come on yet. They're in ambush, so they're just hanging out on the table edge still. So, enemy turn. We've got the Vortex swirling around. It moves randomly, so you can't control it. Could go anywhere. Oh, actually, it was a flee from the Dryads last turn, and they don't rally, so they continue fleeing towards the table edge, but they don't quite make it, so they've got one more turn to try and save themselves. Swab says, confusing when tournaments use different rules. Well, I think square-based, obviously, is the kind of the home of the Renegade pack as well for the old world. So I think a lot of people do adopt at least parts of the square-based system out there. And I do kind of like that limit, because GW, so far, haven't really touched the old world at all, so people did have to make some tweaks to the rules, or to the army composition and things like that, or to the scoring of games, or the scoring for tournaments, because GW didn't really do anything kind of balance-wise, or they left the Renegade factions without any kind of touch whatsoever. So the community does have some role to play in this game, because GW aren't just fully on top of it. If you look at something like Age of Sigmar, every few months, all the points are adjusted for the entire game. So they're really trying to stay on that, but you don't get that with the old world. So I think the community needs to kind of keep on top of it with a light, gentle touch in the gaps that GW leave, and make rulings on some of their things that are ambiguous to try and hopefully get the community playing it the same way everywhere, which is a bit of an ask. You can see that the dragon has charged into the anvil and could potentially kill it and then overrun towards the cabbage patch, the baggage train. The tree man has charged into the dwarf warriors, knowing full well that you've only got one wound left, and this is a dangerous unit that's already killed the brand new Cathayan dragon in the previous game, just with combat resolution. So, Orion is hanging out as well, trying to do something. Tree Lord Ancient going after the miners, not quite reaching them yet. Eternal Guard positioning in front of my Hammerers, so I'll have to fight them before I get to anything juicy. The Anvil has one wound left, because it buffed up its armour in the previous turn, knowing it's probably going to be charged, so it's got rerolls and armour saves there. And in combat, well, the Tree Man kills one dwarf. The dwarves get up to a combat resolution of 6. So, how do they get that? They are a close order unit of unit strength 10. They outnumber the enemy as infantry. They have 2 ranks. They have a banner. And they have the Rune of Battle. So the Tree Man fails its leadership test, flees through the Thunderers, fails a Perils test, and takes its last wound. So the Tree Man fled from the Dwarf Warriors, tripped over one of the Thunderers, and died. How embarrassing. So that's 2 games in a row that big, expensive monsters have thought they could take on a simple unit of Dwarf Warriors with hand weapon and shield, not done much, bounced off their static combat res, and then died. Which is amazing, frankly. Okay, so Dragon does ultimately kill the Anvil and ends up hanging out by the cabbage. Turn 6 for me. Now, the baggage train, in order to destroy it, I believe you have to move into it in a remaining move subphase, and then the next turn you can destroy it. So you can't charge and kind of end up on it, to my understanding. We've got how am I pronouncing that? Obsidiaries, perhaps? Who is clearly a Dwarven fan. So into my turn, charge through the Eternal Guard and beat them up. And obviously kill them. There's only 5 of them, so they're never going to stand up to the might of this Dwarven Death Star. And shuffle everyone else around, so they're not all going to get killed. And keeping my... Actually, the Dwarf Warriors move forward a bit, so Orion can't get to them. And also so I could shoot Orion with the organ gun. There's still a Tree Man with 1 wound there, which is annoying. Enemy turn. The Dryads that were fleeing failed to rally for the second time and run off the table, so that's a big chunk of points. The Tree Lord Ancient charges into the miners. Treekin, who were... oh yeah, they charged my... let's see. They tried to charge... let's go back. They're here. They tried to charge my Rangers who moved down away from them last turn. Can't see them, they're just out of shot there. They attempt the charge, but they don't make it because it's quite far. The dragon goes into the flank of my dwarf warriors, which, again, when are these monsters going to learn not to charge into dwarf warriors? Let's find out. So, Orion is just moving into a different table section for the domination scoring, and the Dryads just turn around to be intimidating. This is the baggage train, by the way, which I haven't got time to destroy. 5 miners get killed. We have a champion here versus the dragon. Now, I don't think... if the champion started off down here... where was the champion? Let me go back, because I want to see if this was legal. Okay, the champion shouldn't be there for a start. I think I just put it back there after a challenge earlier or something. Champion should actually be in one of these 3 spots. So the musician's there, the standard's there, so the champion should actually be here. So in that case, it's okay to challenge, because you've been charged. 2 of them are the fighting ranks. You're in the fighting rank as a champion, you can challenge. So I think that would be legal, because the champion should actually be here, not on the end, because they should be in the centre. So I think that is okay. So we get into a challenge, and nothing really happens. The champion obviously gets killed, but I've got good combat res, and yeah, no drama whatsoever. And that's how the game ends. So, let me pull up the scoring for that game, because it's pretty close again. It feels like I've done significantly more damage to the enemy, because I've killed one big unit, giant unit of Dryads. I've killed a tree man. I've killed the Eternal Guard. I've got another tree man down to 1 wound, so that's going to be worth points. What's the enemy killed? The enemy has killed one of the organ guns, the anvil, and I think that's about it. Not a lot else. So, in terms of scoring the zones, there's a gyrocopter in this one. So I think I've got that one. Orion has this one. Or the Orion and the Tree Lord Ancient have it over the miners, so a bit of a boost in points for the enemy there. This one, the enemy have, but I've got a big unit in there as well, so it's not going to be worth that much. And I think this one is... I think they're pretty much all contested. Maybe the gyrocopter has this one on its own, but that's about it. So, Armando says, is this 1.5? In terms of the edition number of the old world? Or is this game 1.5? If you're talking about the old world edition, I would say this is 1.5 now. You could even have launched a new edition with just these rules amendments, I think. And people would have thought, yeah, that's significant enough changes, because it is like a totally different game now with the new scoring and the new scenarios. So yes, it definitely feels like a new edition. And I approve so far with the new FAQ and all the missions and so on. So, adding up all the scores for this game, what is your prediction for the final score here? Just looking at it on the face of it, I've killed a bit more. If that's a special feature, then I have a core unit on there as well. So that'd be some extra points. So it felt pretty good going into the end of the game. Felt like I might have a win here. But, alas, the threshold for victory is 400 points, and I think I was up by 300 and something. So not quite enough for a win. So, had I been able to, for example, do 1 more wound to that tree man, maybe that would have been enough to win. In fact, I think it definitely would have. So almost a win for the Dwarves, but it's another draw. So 2 draws back to back. And I think it's becoming evident here in this game, because you see how it seems like the Dwarves are doing well. I haven't lost much, and I've killed some significant units. But it's such a big victory threshold, and Dwarves aren't the best at winning big at the best of times. Even under the lower victory thresholds, they still squeeze out a lot of 11-9s if they're going to win at all, because shooting isn't ideal for finishing off units, so it's not great for scoring points. and dwarves do shooting quite well. And dwarves aren't bad in combat, but they also get just little extra daggers to them, like -1 on pursuit rolls. So wiping out a unit in combat doesn't happen that often. Usually you're going to be trying to run them down because you've done so much damage that they fail their test. And dwarves, on average, aren't going to catch most enemies that are running away from them. So it's the double whammy of it's easy to hide from shooting when you're almost dead, and you're quite likely to escape from a dwarf when fleeing. Not always, obviously, but you're more likely than with other races because they get the -1. So dwarves have trouble finishing off units, which is historically how it's gone for my entire old world playing time. It's been a struggle to finish units off, and I think that's still kind of the same for dwarves. So we could still struggle to get big enough wins or big enough margins between the victory points to reach victory thresholds or to reach big wins. So maybe it needs a bit of a tweak of the list. Maybe we need to try out some different things to score bigger points. Time will tell. On to the next game. So 2 draws in the bank so far, which is about right for dwarves, I think. And let me crack open my opponent's list in this game. So this is one of the armies that, going into games, I often have like 1 to 3% confidence level. It is Wolves of the Sea. As soon as I hear Wolves of the Sea, I think, oh no. Because I have never managed to have an answer to them with dwarves. I've never been sure how to deal with them. Because they've got dragons, but they also have lots of skirmisher units that hit very hard on the charge and are significantly faster than dwarves. They have skirmish cavalry, which are very easy to fit through gaps to get to things that are hiding at the back, like war machines or anvils. It's difficult to block off against skirmishers. They have loads of ambushing units, which is a nightmare for anything that wants to stay near the back of the table. You can't corner camp against them anymore, because you have to be out there scoring objectives, otherwise you're just going to be giving away hundreds of points every turn. So I think Wolves of the Sea are historically a struggle for me, and I don't see this being any different going into the game. But we've still got to try and get something out of it. So, what is my plan? Because, what are we up against here? Let me get some pictures of the enemy. We have got an Exalted Champion on a dragon. Let me go over to the dragons. So there's one there. There's actually 2 Exalted Champions on dragons, and they are both just under the points limit of 500 points. They're both 496. So you can't take a Chaos Lord on dragon and also give it loads of upgrades anymore, because it's too expensive. So you can take an Exalted Champion and give it loads of upgrades. So you're going to lose out on something there. So what do these ones lose out on? One of them has the Crown of Everlasting Conquest. One of them has Talisman of the Carrion Crow. So they do both have the triple save. What do they lack? They have 1 less toughness than a Chaos Lord on dragon. They're down at toughness 5. And they're less equipped to fight than a Chaos Lord. They're not quite as good. And 1 less wound, which means it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it actually is, because it also means that they don't get the +1 combat res for close order, because they don't have a unit strength 10, they're only 9. So they're not going to be as great at murdering infantry units, but dragons are worse at that anyway now, but they do fit into the points limit. So I think this could be the future for Chaos Dragons, Exalted Champions, because you can still give them the triple save, you can still give them the Mark of Nurgle to make them difficult to fight against, you can give them Brazen Collars for the magic resistance too, and I think with all that, they're still a pretty tasty proposition at sometimes over 100 points cheaper than what you would spend on a Chaos Lord on dragon. So I think they're both going to be pretty good, so 1 there as well. Then, what else have we got? I think that's it for characters. Then, there are Marauder Berserker, a tribe Berserkers. So there's 4 units of 14. One of them's on the table here, one is there. And there is another couple of units off the table in ambush, at least. Then there's 10 Marauder Horsemen there. Then if we go back down this end, you can see that we've got a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, which is this big thing here. There is a second one right there. 2 of those. There is one Dragon Ogre on its own, which is down here. And another one on its own, which is there. They're not Shartak, it's just regular, cheap 65 points, just one Dragon Ogre in each unit. And a gigantic spawn, which is a very good creature, which is only 170 points, but for that you do get a toughness 6 random moving monster that can bypass stand and shoot and other scary things like that. So, we've got all the horrible monster gribblies at that side, and we've got the dragons and all the horrible skirmish infantry on this side. So if we go back to the wide shot here, what is my plan? So, this side of the table, I think I can take out these monsters. So I've got my organ guns positioned on the hill, so the enemy is hopefully going to have to go through my units to get to them, ideally. And I'm not letting them ambush next to the organ guns, because I've got the Anvil of Doom there. So if they want to ambush the Anvil, that's okay. I don't mind that. I've put the rangers in the woods, so I can be firing out at the big dragons, maybe, as they come towards me. But this is really more of a delaying force, because I don't feel like there's much I can do to these dragons if they pick their fights well. Because however tough it may be to charge into the Dwarf Warriors, or the Hammerers, or even the Rangers, a Doom Seeker, or an Anvil of Doom, or an Organ Gun, or an Engineer, or a Gyrocopter, they're all very squishy, so they could all just get eaten by dragons, which, if they do so, also puts them behind my lines, which is not ideal. Charging in 2 of them together into one of my fighty units would also be quite scary, but they still probably wouldn't want to risk it into the front of the Hammerers. I think I can take down these monsters, so what I'm hoping is that they don't all succeed their charges at once, like one at a time into the Dwarf Warriors, so I'd win the combat res, hopefully. And the Hammerers are... depends, because everything on that side is so fast and evasive, because look how many skirmishers there are, so nothing is really stationary on that side. So if I turn my Hammerers around and start going this way, none of that stuff's going to be there by the time I arrive. So this is the more static side, with things that are kind of stuck in place a bit more. So I'm going to send my Hammerers and try and deal with them, and use my shooting infantry units to try and block up this lot. Some of them are going to have to stay behind, because you can see there is an objective there, and then some of them will have to reach this one and maybe stay on that if they want it. My Gyrocopter is going to go around the flank and maybe hide and then look for charges if they advance, because if I can charge them I can deny them bonuses when they charge if I hit them first and do impact hits on them, and when they hit back it won't be too significant because they won't have, for example, flails, which Marauder units generally have. They won't be able to use those if I charge them first. The Doomseeker can throw himself out and try and take a charge from something as well, and hopefully that'll work out, but let's find out anyway. So it's encirclement, so you can see there's 4 strategic locations, so a lot of objectives available on the table. Baggage trains are in effect, and a special feature, so we've got a special feature in the middle that's worth points at the end. So the deployment zones where you can't go all the way across to one side. So let's dive into turn 1. Mine is obviously hanging out off the table. Dice says, a giant rat's core in Skaven, that's a fun option. I don't know, they might be. There are the additional marauders that are hanging out off the table in ambush, so I'm going first. Now, Wolves of the Sea offer you a challenge to one of your single wound unit champions, and if you're a dwarf you don't have very high initiative, so you probably don't want to take it because you'll die, and that means you lose the choice of first turn. Now, I don't know whether it's worded in the Wolves of the Sea entry in the book that if you win the challenge or the enemy refuses it, you get to go first, or whether it's now you get to choose, because they amended it so that you can actually choose to go second now. Sometimes you want to go second in this game now. With the scoring the way it is, if you're going last and domination is in effect, for example, you can then determine on the final turn where you send your units to maximise your scoring output based on where the enemy units are. So if you can deny the enemy some points by moving into one of their sections at the end, because you know exactly where all their units are going to be, then it's better to go last in those situations. Also, if you go second against a gun line that has 24-inch range, then you can kind of cost them a turn of shooting, potentially. So my opponent wants me to go first in this one. So first things first, let's put stupidity on one of the Shaggoths, and do some good wounds to this Dragon Ogre with that shooting as well. So you can see I've got the Handgun of Doom that moved forward a bit to shoot, and the Rangers were able to shoot, but I didn't accomplish much on that side. Gyrocopter is waiting. Doomseeker is not. Doomseeker just wants to get out into the fight. So one objective held each in the first turn. And turn one for the enemy. One of the dragons into the Doomseeker. And oh, by the way, not only Exalted Champions on Chaos Dragons, but also any kind of Chaos character potentially on a Manticore could be cool now, or on a Demonic Mount, because that is actually cavalry, which means you are allowed to take it to a 2-up save, which is also now kind of an interesting option, including infantry and just regular cavalry. Chaos Lords as well might come into favour. We'll see, because people are going to want to put the beefy characters in their core units that are holding objectives to support them. So maybe that could become a thing, but I think dragons are still just too good. So you have to take at least one when you can, I think. And Warp Fire Dragon's also nice because you can avoid challenges because it's not a character. So, enemy moving up onto an objective, dragon charging into the Doomseeker. And all these big horrible monsters moving up in a big line, ready to get shot. And this isn't a very nice sight here. You can see though that this Exalted Champion on Chaos Dragon rolled a 1 on the Eye of the Gods table, re-rolled it and got a 1 again, so it's stupid for the rest of the game now. So it could fail those tests and just fail to do anything, so we're getting double value of enemy stupidity in this one. Now, because this cavalry unit have poked out in front of the building, I'm going to charge them next turn with the Gyrocopter. We're both skirmishers, so they won't be attacking back with many. They don't have very good armour, so hopefully my impact hits and my attacks will kill a couple of them. I can barely be hit back, and I'll win combat, and then be able to stay locked in combat with them for a bit, just to stop them combo charging in with any dragons into my rangers. If anything's going in, I would rather it just be one dragon at a time, so I can get stand and shoot, and then I can challenge it with the unit champion, and maybe have a chance at winning combat res. You can see that I've buffed up the ranger's armour as well, with my Anvil of Doom. You can see it's the swirly one, so that means they've got +1 to armour and reroll armour saves. And if they do get charged by a dragon, I'll use the hand weapon and shield instead of the great weapon. So I'd be on a 3+ save, re-rolling saves against the dragon then. Before, obviously, AP. So, the Doomseeker gets killed, and the dragon just angles itself a bit. Even if at this point-blank range, I would still get a stand and shoot with my throwing axes as well. Okay, another 30 points each. And then some more for the Chaos. Because they're on 2 objectives now, if you look, 1 here and 1 there. My turn 2. Organ guns open fire. Kill one of the Dragon Ogres. Rangers, with the swirl for their armour, open fire. And do a wound on a dragon. And I think I've done a wound on this dragon with something as well, maybe the Thunderers. So we are wounding the dragons slowly, and the Gyrocopter did go in there against the cavalry, and did win, so I was able to stay in combat and stop them joining in the charge, which was the goal. However, on this side, I've decided that anything coming around this side is going to take a while, because the spawn is a random move, you can't rely on its speed, and one of the Shaggoths is going that way as well. So I'm just going to come this way and let them wander around there and do nothing. Because these two are not a match for the Hammerers in any way. So I don't think they would even bother. You can see I fired the stupidity gun at this one as well. And it is a fun thing to do. But leadership tests for stupidity are not generally a big deal in the game at the moment. Even units that you would expect to have low leadership are typically going to be near the enemy general anyway. And certain units have ways to boost their leadership through extra ranks and that kind of thing. So stupidity tests aren't the most easy thing to fail nowadays. However, it is a big impact when they do fail, so it is funny bringing the stupidity gun. So turn 2 for the enemy. What's that? The enemy general fails its stupidity test that it gave to itself from the Eye of the Gods and has to sit there and do nothing. So on that basis, the other dragon decides, you know what, we're not going to charge the rangers because we might end up going in by ourselves and get killed. That's not a good idea. My old dragon pal. Let's go for the anvil instead. So that one goes for the anvil. Infantry are forced to charge. I think they have frenzy. So they're forced to charge into my rangers, but they don't make the charge, and they take a wound from stand and shoot as well. So, it's going alright so far. And you can see wounds are being dealt around here. Oh, there's Eye of the Gods. Gives a temporary buff to this unit as well. I can't remember what that one does. And that one's a 5, which is one of the better permanent buffs. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head though. Now we've got an ambushing unit of infantry pop up behind the rangers, so that's not very nice. This is what I expect from Wolves of the Sea. You can't pin them down. They don't follow the rules that the rest of the game does. Well, Wood Elves, certain lists they make don't follow those rules either. And, well, or Skinks for that matter. The giant spawn makes quite a good move over here, but you can see I've got my miners onto the table now as well, and I decide that they're best being used to guard my baggage train right now, because there's nowhere in enemy territory for them to really do anything at the moment. And anywhere they would pop up, they would be charged by enemy skirmishers with flails, so they would just be killed instantly as soon as they appear, so it doesn't seem useful. Perfidy in the chat, good evening. Okay, so we've got a stupid dragon sitting out there, but this one isn't so stupid and does eat the anvil in one go, and then turns this way to face the thunderers or the organ guns. So this one is now into the danger zone behind my lines, but it does mean it's not in combat, so now I've got a chance to shoot it. It does have triple save though, so the points are building up, the chaos are building them up faster than I am. Turn 3 for me. Picture of a combat resolution counter, the gyrocopter, and the rangers that charged in as well to join in. So if we go back to the wide shot, the rangers do not want to be rear charged by flail wielding infantry, so I decide to charge them into the flank of this cavalry, who are skirmishers though, so they don't technically have a flank as such. It's through difficult terrain though, but I do make the charge, and now I'm a bit safer from the rear charge, and it also means I can turn the tide against this cavalry unit who flee. And there we go, the gyrocopter overruns into the flail-wielding berserkers as well, which is nice because it's going to stop them charging anyone next turn. So this is going quite smoothly here. It would have been better if I'd wiped out the unit, but you can't have everything. By the way, the reason that the rangers are in 2 ranks, I thought they were going to be spending a lot of time shooting at large targets like dragons in this game, so 2 ranks is fine because you can still shoot with everybody. But anytime they shoot at infantry or cavalry, they can only shoot with the front rank unless they're on a hill. The Shaggoth and the Dragon Ogre, for some reason, decide instead of going for the hammerers, we're just going to try and run away from them. But I will have the opportunity to try and charge them now. But as you can see, I didn't manage to. The miners do charge the giant spawn, because it would be my only chance to strike first at it, but didn't go that well. And then my warriors turn round just to stare at the monsters, inviting them in. Like, come on, we've already dealt with a Cathayan dragon and a tree man. What are you going to do that's any better than that? And I've put stupidity onto one of the dragons, the one that wasn't already stupid, from its own hand. So both dragons have to make stupidity tests next turn, so we'll see if they get stuck. And points racking up. It's not a huge difference, because I have got some... That's wrong, I think it should say 180 now, because I'm on 2 objectives now, if we look over here and here, because I've got the rangers up onto this one now. Turn 3 for the enemy. The Chaos Dragon fails its stupidity test again. So it's standing just in front of my army for the 2nd turn in a row doing nothing. The cavalry do rally. And the Shaggoth is going to charge into the miners to try to finish them off. And the rangers stand and shoot against the other dragon, but they do get charged and they're probably going to get eaten. So these 2 are in combat with the miners, but they wouldn't physically get in because the models are too pokey. And this dragon failing its test is turning what should have been a nightmare into something a bit more manageable for now. Up to this point it's still going okay. Lost the anvil, but I've managed to use some cunning to pin down certain enemy units. Perfidy says, new stupidity equals chaos literally unplayable. Well, if you choose to roll an Eye of the Gods, you're taking that risk. I found that whenever I roll an Eye of the Gods, I always become stupid. So maybe it's just not worth doing. But on the other hand, if you're taking the Exalted Champion now instead of the Lord, you can use Eye of the Gods to buff their stats up to almost being a Chaos Lord. So on average, it is worth rolling on the Eye of the Gods. If you've got a reroll, there's only a 1 in 36 chance that you'll become stupid. And if you do become stupid, you still have to then fail a leadership test for it to matter. So the odds against you becoming stupid and then failing the test are very low. However, if it does happen, it is quite a big deal, because that's a big, expensive, powerful unit that's just sitting there doing nothing. Okay, I still think, by the way, that if you super fail on the Eye of the Gods, you should turn into a mini spawn. I think that should be a risk that could happen. So, for example, if you roll a 1, and then roll a 1, and then roll another 1, for instance. 3 1s in a row, and you're a super spawn. Why not? I think that would be funny. And I would do that, and I play Chaos, and if I'm asking for that, it must be fair. So, the cavalry unit moved down here, so I can't charge the dragon. I think that's why they're doing it. And the marauders that popped in off the ambush have moved up a bit as well. Ruth says there should be more risk of spawndom. Yeah, there should be more risk, because if you're asking for the favour of the Chaos Gods all the time, occasionally they're just going to be feeling a bit spicy, and they'll look down and think, you know what, that champion's been asking for a lot from us lately, and it hasn't even killed anyone yet during this battle, so I think I'm just going to turn him into a spawn. And the other Chaos Gods look over and like, yeah, I think that's fair. You pray to strange, unseen forces, you should have strange, unforeseen consequences, I think. So there should be a risk of spawn, but maybe that's too fun. And yeah, a way to turn into a demon prince as well. Why not? That would be difficult to implement, because it would involve, if it's supposed to be a positive and your Chaos Lord on a dragon turns into a demon prince, it actually gets significantly worse. So if the dragon is somehow separate from the rider at that point, you'd need something like that in there, I think. Or maybe you can only become a demon prince if you don't have a monster mount. Something like that. Yeah, there should be more fun on the Eye of the Gods table, other than just stupidity or stat buffs. Because you are asking for help from the Chaos Gods. They should be giving you bizarre transformations, and it should vary based on which god you're calling to as well, I think. I think they could add a lot more flavour in the Eye of the Gods, definitely. Hung Hop says Demon Prince is unstable. Yes. So it dies to combat res. Lambo says, I think you're onto something. A Demon Prince riding a dragon. Also an option. I would allow that. Okay, so you can see the miners get killed by the monsters. The giant spawn almost overruns off the table. The Shaggoth is actually stuck inside the charge arc of the Dwarf Warriors now. So that's kind of funny, but I may not want to charge it anyway, because I'm not going to get a good enough save, and I would rather fight it on while I'm just facing it, let it charge me so I have a better save. On the other hand, if I charge it now, I don't have to also deal with the spawn at the same time, so that's something else to think about. So, over on this side, you can see that the Dragon Ogre and the Shaggoth have just gone round the side of the Hammerers. This is why Hammerers look pretty stupid in this game. People just walk round them and don't fight them. Even though they're obscenely powerful, you could see what they were able to do when I've actually been able to fight with them so far. From champion to bloodthirsty at Hero's Tale. Yeah, I remember in old games of Warhammer, you used to have to bring an extra demon prince just in case someone turned into one. Maybe that could be one specifically for unit champions if they do something really impressive, like a unit champion kills an enemy character in a challenge or something, or even just kills an enemy champion in a challenge. Then you get to roll on the special favours table because you've been blessed, and you roll on the specific one for your god. So you could turn into a demon prince. If you're all a 1, you turn into a spawn, which is still okay because you're only a unit champion to begin with, so being a spawn isn't that big of a deal. I think they're just missing out on a bit of flavour there. So whoever's writing the next Chaos book should be making furious notes here and consulting old editions of Warhammer as well. So the points for the objectives is creeping up slightly towards Chaos, but it's not that big of a deal yet. So in my turn, I decide I am actually going to charge the Shaggoth, because fighting just one monster at a time is better than one. And if I can beat it in combat, it's so close to the edge of the table, it'll probably just run off. So that's what I'm going for. We'll see if it works. But, as you can see, it didn't work. So, there is also an interesting thing that happened here as well. So, we had to get a TO involved to see if this was something that was legit. So, what I wanted to do with the Rangers was to charge into this unit that the gyrocopter is fighting, the infantry. At which point I would then start swinging and touch this unit of cavalry. But my thinking was, because it would be accidental contact, they wouldn't be able to get a charge reaction. So, we then started looking at what happens with accidental contact and saw that actually they can choose to give ground rather than being touched. So they could choose to go back 2 inches. And at that point, would my unit then continue swinging, or would they stop where they were because they'd already finished when they made contact with both units? Now, it turned out to be kind of irrelevant, because if you want to charge into 2 units, you have to declare into both anyway. If you have to make contact with another one with your swing, then you have to also declare into that one, so they would have got a charge reaction. So they could have just fled anyway, which would have meant that I would then move in and clip the dragon, who could choose to stay in combat and think, well, I'm stupid, so I'm not moving, but thanks for bringing me into the fight, lads. Very much appreciated. So I don't want to clip the dragon. So, if, under the first scenario I just laid out, if I touch this unit, swing into this one, they choose to give ground, I then keep swinging and hit the dragon and would bring them in, which I obviously don't want to do. So, I am not charging, but when we discussed it initially, we got it wrong, and we theorised that actually I would be able to declare into the left unit, touch the right unit, and would be stuck in that position not fighting the dragon. So I said, okay, I'll charge, and then when we looked it up later, we realised actually I could end up hitting the dragon. So we just dialed it back and cancelled the charge in the first place because we were wrong about the rules. But it did lead to an interesting point. If the dragon wasn't there, and I made contact with this second unit, and they chose to give ground to get out of the way, I would then keep swinging because I'm not flat yet. Would I then touch them again? At which point, could they give ground a second time? Would I then keep swinging and touch them again, and they could give ground a third time? Lambo says, your opponent was a good egg, allowing you to take the charge back. Yes, definitely. Some people probably wouldn't, actually. But it was definitely the fair thing to do, because we had discussed precisely what would happen as a result of me charging, and which units could potentially be brought into the action or not, which is why the charge was made in the first place. So when we realised that the rule actually works a different way, I would say it was fair. Martin says, there are any good eggs at this event as far as I experienced. Yeah, you don't have people doing a lot of weird gotcha type stuff at the square-based TSN events. Like, when I'm running through my army, I'll typically tell you what everything does and then what you want to watch out for. So when I tell you what the runes do on the BSB and the Hammerer unit, then I tell you people don't want to charge them in the front because you won't get this, 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 and this. So you don't want to charge them in the front because no one does. So you don't want to conceal that from someone, and maybe they misunderstand the rules of you as you've read them out, and then they charge in the front, and then you then tell them exactly how it works, and they say, well, I didn't really understand that when you explained it. You just told me the rules, you didn't really give me the context or the implication of the rules. So I like to lay everything out for my opponents so they understand what they're getting into. You don't want to win because you have more knowledge of your opponent's army's rules because it wasn't laid out, yours weren't laid out properly for the enemy to understand. Swab says, do you tell your opponent what items your characters have? Yes. The lists are all public, so you tend to go through the list and explain what everything does as well. Now, I've been to events in the past for other game systems where you have closed lists with secret items, and some games, like Kings of War, has one item you can put on a unit called the Crystal Pendant of Retribution, and when you kill that unit, it explodes and you take loads of damage back. And that was actually a really fun event with closed lists because you knew everyone was going to bring that item. You just didn't know which unit they were going to put it on. So there was real drama when you killed a unit and you just didn't know whether it was going to explode. And if an enemy chaff unit just lands right in front of your entire army, you think, wait a minute, that's definitely an exploding unit, I'm not going to charge that. And then it turns out they didn't even have it anyway. So that was actually a really fun example of a closed list event. So I think there is a place for that kind of thing. Maybe not in Warhammer, because there are way more magic items and upgrades on units that would be extremely complicated to then explain over the course of the game as they come up. It would be too much, I think, for Warhammer, the old world. So, all in all, they just stayed there and shot at the dragon and didn't really accomplish anything. And you can see I did not force the Shaggoth off the table, unfortunately. I did win combat, but it did not flee far enough. I think it just fell back in good order. Okay, so turn 4 for the enemy. Dragon finally passes a stupidity test, charges into my rangers, rear charge from the marauders. This is going to end badly. Flank charge from the giant spawn into the warriors after I couldn't clear out the first monster in one round, but it's not enough of a unit strength to disorder them, which is good. The other dragon kills an organ gun, overruns into the next one. The rangers get obliterated, because the other unit actually charged in as well, because the gyrocopter was already dead. Warriors get munched and chased down by the giant spawn and the Shaggoth, unfortunately. And the hammers are still fine. And suddenly, it's all gone very wrong. So from a position where the rangers were doing quite well over here, it was the constant closing in of the enemy that was surrounding, and there was only so much I could do to delay them. So I think I played that game okay, actually, because it ends pretty much like that. And it does actually turn out to be a decent win for Chaos. So let me look at what the final score was on BCP. Let's have a look. So, even though I've got a very expensive unit left, and I did score a few points over the course of the game, the enemy would have been able to get onto this on the last turn, but there's no photo. So I ended up losing 19-1, which feels very harsh, considering it seemed to be going okay in certain places. I think I did a decent job preventing my rangers getting multi-charged, blocking things, charging things with the gyrocopter to tie them up, and moving units into positions where they couldn't be hit. This guy failing his stupidity test twice obviously helped, but it feels like even though I feel like I played a decent game there, and the enemy had some bad luck with stupidity tests, I still lost 19-1. So what more do I feel like I could do against this? Because I just couldn't kill much, unfortunately. I killed a Dragon Ogre. I think I got both Dragon Ogres in the end. But apart from that, I just wasn't able to get the work done. The organ guns didn't perform very well. If they had, obviously, these big monsters would have been in serious trouble, like the Spawn and the Shaggoths would have been in danger. So this side was looking very healthy. Obviously, my big Hammerer unit survived, Engineer, the BSB, and the King. So I didn't actually lose my entire army. But yeah, it was a strange feeling after this game, because I felt like I was doing alright, but then it ends like this. So, Next game. Upon the Field of Glory. So this one has baggage trains, special feature, domination, and strategic locations. So the special feature was replaced with a herdstone because it's the Beast Men. 4 strategic location objectives, and domination is in effect, and baggage train. So my baggage train is back there, the enemy's is there. Not too close to the edge, which may be wise because my miners could come onto the table. So let's talk about the Beastman list and then the deployment. Let me just fire that one up. New changes for Dwarves are welcome. Yep, I enjoy the infantry changes. Dwarves have definitely been improved by them. I think Dwarves still struggle with scoring. I was talking earlier about the fact that Dwarves struggle to win big because they can't finish off units very easily, and that is still definitely an issue for Dwarves. They don't murder things efficiently enough to finish them off. Shooting isn't efficient because they can hide when they're almost dead, and in combat Dwarves don't run people down very easily unless you use gyrocopters, who are much better at catching things. So maybe a gyrocopter heavy army could be the way to go, especially now that anti-fly technology only shuts them down for one turn instead of every turn. So maybe gyros will be the way to go, because you need to be mobile to get around to score points as well. Obviously they can't score objectives, potentially, unless, let's see, you could take them as core in the engineer's force, but I don't know if you could get a core unit of gyrocopters with sufficient unit strength to score. I don't think you could. Is it actually tied to infantry and cavalry anyway? The ability to score objectives? Because technically they are cavalry, I suppose, like Pegasus Knights. So maybe they could, but I don't know if you could get their unit strength high enough for some of the requirements. So I don't know if gyrocopters would be the perfect solution. They're definitely something to use though, and miners I think definitely have a place. So even though they've not done much so far, the miners, they are scoring me points when they pop up and contest a part of the table that the enemy were previously dominating. And they also force the enemy to keep units back to guard their baggage train as well. So the miners are actually having an impact despite it not seeming like it. So I'm thinking of maybe taking 2 smaller units of miners instead of the 1 unit of 10. And with that, you've got more chance of one of them coming on late in the game to contest an area to stop it being dominated by the enemy, which could cost them some points. And you've got very cheap, inexpensive units then, so you don't care if they come on and get killed so much. So maybe multiple small miner units just to come on and turn the tide of the scoring in a particular area could be a way to go. So miners may have a role now. Okay, the Beastman list. Let's go to the pictures of the Beastmen. The giant is actually facing forwards. Don't worry, it's just facing that way because it's too pokey and it wouldn't fit there with the other giant on this very small base. When you look at the size of the base that some things come on, this is way too small for a giant. So, there is a Doom Bull, which has Bedazzling Helm, Slug Skin, full plate armor. There is a Beast Lord, who is the general, on foot, who is... I'm not sure if it's that one. That looks kind of wizardly. So I think it may be in one of the units. Let's see if I can find the Beast Lord. I'm not sure because they're all just goat dudes. But there's a Beast Lord in there somewhere. So he's got Gnarled Hide, Pelt of Midnight, Chalice of Dark Rain, full plate armor. That's the general. Crawlmore is a spellcaster. And there are 2 Bray Shamans, level 1s. And they all have dark magic. So Doom Bolt is the spell they're all taking. Then there is a... let's see. There is a... in core, there's a 19 Bestigor unit. There is a 25 Gore unit, which is this big one over here with the old school classic Beastmen. I've got some of these plastic Beastmen that someone kindly sent me. When I said that one day I may well turn parts of my Chaos Warriors army into a Beastman army as well, because Dragon Ogres can be in both. So I've already got the start of a Beastman army, technically, so I could do old school Beastmen at some point. But I also said that it's definitely not on the immediate horizon, because I've got a lot of other projects to do first, but maybe one day we could have Beastmen. There is, let's see, 4 Razor Gores, individual, running around on their own. 1, 2, and another one there. Then there is a Herdstone, which does actually cost points, 100 points, and it's been placed in the middle, replacing the special features. That gives buffs if the Beastmen are controlling it, then you get buffs nearby, and you score at the end of the game like any other special feature. There's a Chaos Giant, which is this one here, and there's a Bone Grinder Giant, which is the super large giant. This is the Mantic one here, but it's about the same size as the GW Bone Grinder Giant, which is one of their coolest models. It's just very skinny, so it doesn't look necessarily as good next to the Mega Gargants from Age of Sigmar, because they're much chunkier, so it looks weird next to them. So, we've got lots of Gore units. And let's go back to the wide shot a sec and talk about my tactics here. We've got a lot of ways to score, and the obvious thing to do is to put a core unit just sitting on this objective the whole time and racking up points. However, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to put my rangers here and just score points, because what I feel like is going to happen, there's 2 fighty Gore units here. I think they can be pushed forward pretty quickly, and I don't want to end up in a fight here with just my rangers, and there's a building here blocking any support from this side. On this side, I feel like if I turn in to face anything coming from that way, we've got giants and we've got another unit of Bestigor up there that would come in and hit me in the flank. So I don't feel like I can provide good enough support to a unit in this position. So I felt like the Hammerers wanted to go here, but not because they want to stay on the objective, obviously. They can't score it. They're just going to gun straight forward and try and plough through one of these units. I think this unit here has -1 to be shot at, so not ideal for war machines. So the Hammerers are hopefully going to get through one of these two units and then take the enemy baggage trains. They're just going to blast through there. The Rangers are going to advance up. Try not to be charged by the pigs because they do impact hits, so don't want to be fighting them ideally. I'd rather shoot them, and if they're not able to charge me, I can advance onto the objective. These warriors can advance towards this objective, but not too aggressively because there's all kinds of horrible gribblies over there. So mostly defensively, giving up this objective. If anyone wants to come and get it, they'll get organ gunned and anviled and stupidity gunned anyway. I've got my Thunderers way back here guarding the cabbage train from anything that tries to come round the hill. 10 Thunderers. Could maybe do some damage to a giant if that's what's coming. Let's see. Viletide was selected on one of the wizards, actually. They switched the spell for Viletide. So there is a Viletide in there on one of the shamans. So there's Viletide and Doombolt. The honest wargamer is here. As everyone should be, really. This is the hottest off-the-press matched play guide tournament report. We even had round 1 versus Grand Cathay, the first kill of the Cathayan dragon, which hasn't even been released yet. Tongkop says, did everyone have to bring their own baggage trains for the tournament? There were bases provided if people didn't bring their own, but most people brought one that they'd made. I wasn't able to finish painting mine because of the heat in this room, but I am looking at it right now, and it has been built and undercoated, and it may be the coolest one ever because it does actually have cabbages on it. So that is the most important thing. Lambo says, I'm disappointed this didn't go live at 5:15 PM. Well, a few of us actually stayed around at the old TSN a bit after the event, discussing the new rules for a bit and talking about the implications of them. And then when I got back, I also had to then eat some food as well. Okay, so mine is off the table, of course. With my nice Vanguard moves, the Doomseeker, it's always very intimidating when the Doomseeker from the deployment zone thrusts himself forward 3 inches towards the enemy before the game. You thought you had like 4 turns until the Doomseeker reached you, but maybe you've actually got like 3.5 turns, and that's if you come forward. So you should be intimidated by that 3-inch movement from the Doomseeker, because he's going to get you. And by that I mean he's going to get charged and killed. But he's not giving up points. The Honest Wargamer. Is that a donation in the chat? Okay, I have to read this one out then. Who was the best dressed person you played? Ooh, best dressed. You know what? I don't feel like I paid enough attention. If I'd known this was going to be a question, I could have actually paid attention to how people were dressed. I normally try and scoop the best dressed award with my humorous t-shirts and orange shorts and brightly coloured socks usually. So it's been disappointing that the best dressed award hasn't been there. Anytime there has been anything resembling a best dressed award has been anytime someone comes with some kind of bizarre, strange, like Halloween costume or something. So I would like there to be a permanent best dressed award. Top 3 best dressed awards. Get those certificates printed for the square-based, and not just Old World. We want to see that in Age of Sigmar. We want to see that Star Wars Scatterpoint. Best dressed player at every event. How about that? I don't think anyone would complain if the trophy presentation ceremony takes another 5 minutes because you're giving out best dressed certificates. I think that's fair. And the people seem to be in agreement. Steve is on board. And that vote is worth a lot. Okay, so shooting is going to be big. Let's see if we can bring down those beasts. Turn 1 is going to me. And I'm given the first turn because it's going to limit what I can shoot in the first turn. There's not much that I can reach yet. My gyrocopter moves in amongst the beasts so it can't be charged by them, getting ready to hassle somebody. And my rangers, which are over here, plink 1 wound onto this pig. The Thunderers and the Anvil, the Organ Guns, the ones that are able to reach anything. I've put Stupidity on this unit Bestigor. We'll see if it stops them moving. You can see my engineer moved forward a bit so he could shoot. And not much accomplished with shooting, but I've moved the Hammerers up. And what I'm thinking I should have done, really, I haven't done it at this event yet, is I should have really looked at starting the Hammerers in marching column and just blasted them across the table and used the Anvil to move them again. The reason I'm not doing that isn't necessarily because I don't want to be close to the enemy. It's because I no longer trust the Anvil to successfully cast its rune bound spells successfully, because it only casts on a 2+ instead of a 3+ now, and the spell values haven't really come down. So I feel like the Anvil fails more than it succeeds now. And that seems to be how it's playing out. On average, it should get most of its runes successfully struck with an average dice roll. But for me, at this event, it's been quite subpar. So I don't trust it, especially the Conveyance one. I think that's the one that's on a 10. So you need to get an 8 on the dice, which is above average for a dice roll. So on average, you fail to convey one of your units to move. So maybe the Anvil has actually saved me with its dispelling powers in some of the games a lot, though. With the +3, that is a big deal if the enemy come close enough to it. So I'm not sure about the Anvil now, because the Conveyance is the big thing if you want to get a unit across the table. You may have seen me in previous tournaments take the big line of hammers with Ungrim in there and just yeeted them across the table with the Anvil and put them right in front of the enemy lines turn 1. You can't really do that reliably now because an average dice roll fails, so you either double down and take 2 Anvils, so you're at least going to get 1 success, you would think, to blast the unit across the table. You also combine it with the rune that lets you make a 3-inch vanguard move. You put the pony cart in there to give them 1-inch extra movement, so you get all the way across the table. Or you don't take any Anvils. I think 1 Anvil is not as good as it once was, especially now that the Rune Lord dispels on a +2. 21-inch range, but he can actually move, so he can get closer to the enemy. So maybe a Rune Lord, or Rune Lords scattered around the army, maybe they're going to get more work done than the Anvil. Potentially 2 Rune Lords, 1 for each key unit maybe, moving them into key locations to dispel. I may try that at some point. And yes, Old World suddenly does look like Warhammer Fantasy again. They resemble the battles from the old days of White Dwarf, where you actually see ranked up units. Being a unit in a rank, having 4 or 5 ranks of models actually kind of makes sense now in the rules. Linehammer used to be the way to go because you could just attack from 3 feet away. From halfway across the table you could still swing, but now you can't. And winning on combat resolution is now much easier, so you're rewarded for taking those ranks now. So it just looks like more of a battle. We'll see whether the meta stays that way or whether people latch onto something else that is equally as uninspiring as lines and dragons and nothing else. But maybe they've cracked it, and so maybe we're going to have at least a period of people trying these square units before they find out what the actual hotness is once they've delved deeper into the rules and tried everything out. Tizzy says, had big success with an Orc and Goblin infantry focused army versus a monster beastmen list. All those behemoths and pigs stood no chance. Orcs and Goblins can get really good combat resolution. They have tons of models in their units. They're always going to be outnumbering you until you've whittled them down to nothing. They have things like firing out fanatics. Orcs and Goblins seem strong at the moment. So in the first turn I'm not scoring any points, as I said, because I'm not putting anything on this objective. Now, I could have done, but I don't want to get surrounded. I didn't want to focus too much in the centre and have them coming in from both sides with pigs, for example. So, stopping being flanked. I may have actually used the term Operation Do Not Get Flanked during this game. Turn 1 for the enemy. So, blasting off towards my lines. At this point, my Hammerers are going to have a choice of whether to go that way or that way. Go for the gore or the Bestigor. The giants and all the horrible gribblies over there are moving up. And the pig has turned and they're looking at the gyrocopter. That one's run away, but I can still see it, so I'm going to be able to charge it, which led to another interesting rules conundrum, which we will come to in a moment. So, Bestigor, I think these ones are also Bestigor. Are these the ones that are in core? Yeah, because you can take one unit as core and then the other one is in special. So this one is on the objective now, so this will be the core unit. The special one is in the middle. So they're not worrying about objectives too much, they're just gunning for me. So, my Dwarf Warriors take 1 casualty. And that's not too much, not too bad. Points for the Beastmen being racked up slowly into my turn. So from this position, what am I going to do? I'm going to try and charge that piggy with my gyrocopter, try and finish it off with impact hits, which would be fun. And then the hammers have to decide where to go. Here's an interesting thing though. The Beastmen, I know they've got an item now that shuts down all war machine shooting for 1 turn, which is a huge deal because you have that one pivotal turn where the enemy has moved into short range and they're ready to charge you, and that's when your war machines do most of their damage, particularly organ guns, volley guns, that kind of thing. And they just deny you that without a dice roll. They just say, I am declaring now that you're not allowed to shoot your war machines this turn. I'm not sure what the law is for the item, whether it's like a smoke bomb or something, or whether it's a foul stench emitting from the beast hooves, because you know they don't wash their feet very much, those hooves. They've probably trudged through a couple of swamps now and then, but I don't think that's going to get them very clean. So they've probably got a bit of lingering stench, and they'd let that build up, maybe wear a sock for a few days while trudging the swamp, and then take off the sock, swing it round a bit, let that fog settle, and just deny the enemy war machines the chance to shoot for a turn. It also halves the range of other shooting units for the turn as well. So if you're going big on war machines, beastmen can really shut you down for that one critical turn. So I know that's coming. So this unit is going to be able to get to about here, and then I'm not going to be able to shoot it very easily for a turn. So what's my plan? Do I just let these units die? The answer is kind of. So my plan is to go through this gap with the hammerers because I want to kill these gore and then get the baggage train. There's big points there, at which point I can then turn round, because I don't anticipate it taking too long, killing a unit of gore with my big unit of elite hammerers, and then turn back round and start dealing with other things. And while this unit of Bestigor is chewing through my staggered line of war machines, hopefully that'll be too late and I'll have killed some other stuff by then. We'll see though. There's also, what I'm also planning to do is to not keep my BSB in the unit here too long. I'm going to pop him out so he can use his handgun to shoot things as well, because there's a lot of targets around here. So the Doomseeker moving up, who can also join in to kill those gore faster. The Rangers moving up towards the objective. Hammer is moving through there. Again, the anvil fails to convey them forward further though, so they're quite far from the enemy still. And I made the Bestigor unit stupid with the stupidity gun. So hopefully they'll fail and they'll just get stuck there anyway. But they are veterans, so I think they get to re-roll it, which is lame. So, the gyrocopter did kill the pig though. And the miners have come on, miles away from anybody because they don't want to die. Dwarf warriors are accepting that this unit can charge them. They don't care because infantry like to be charged now. They're just into that. Beastmen are building up a decent lead on objectives though, so I'm getting a little bit concerned about that. Turn 2 for the enemy. Pig tries to charge gyrocopter. I flee, of course, and don't get caught. But I do take a dangerous terrain test fleeing through, I think, the terrain? I'm not sure whether that's correct. Maybe I lost that wound to something else. Either way, the Bestigor pass the test, and they choose this turn that I'm not going to be able to shoot my war machines in the following turn. So we get a TO check to make sure that includes the anvil, because it is technically a war machine. And it's decreed that yes, if that's a magic missile, you can't shoot with it in that turn when the Beastman item is in effect. Which item is that? Let's have a look. Let's have a look in the list. Is it the Chalice of Dark Rain? That sounds right. You drink from a chalice and it starts raining. Sounds about right to me. So, I'm not going to be able to shoot next turn. And the fact that the anvil keeps failing with the conveyance is kind of frustrating, because I should really be much closer to the enemy here. The giants are moving in on the thunderers, but I'm not too bothered about that. And really, if you want to come and get the thunderers, that's not many points, and hopefully I can do some damage first. And there's a piggy as well. And the Bestigor. They want me to charge them now, because they're on the objective. And I don't really want to charge them, because I think it would end better for me if they charge me. So, we've also got a horrible vortex. So now it's the time for My turn 3. The gyrocopter just moves away from the enemy after rallying. The Doomseeker fails his charge. The hammerers charge in. And it does not go that well. So here's the deal. If we look at the wide shot here, they actually get to about there. They get to an inch away. So they charge in next turn, I think. So I think this time the anvil actually does successfully convey them, which is how I get an inch away. So next turn is going to be the charge. So you'll see a sneaky beastman maneuver coming up in their turn to watch out for in a moment. So they're going to be charged by the hammerers next turn. Obviously I can't do much shooting, but my Thane pops out the unit and shoots into this unit and kills a few Bestigor, because he's got the Handgun of Doom and doesn't suffer any modifiers or anything, even though he's had his range halved. So he's pretty tasty. Then I do some wounds to the Giant with the Thunderers, but not a lot. And this unit can now charge something. They could charge into my Warriors. They could charge the Organ Gun. Okay, so falling behind on victory points, but I need to start killing very rapidly. Turn 3 for the enemy. Word of Pain is cast onto the hammerers, which I'm unable to stop this time, which is -1 strength and toughness, which isn't great. And the Thunderers get killed by giant power. The Bestigor go into the Organ Gun. This pig moves down here. So he's attempting to block the Doomseeker, I think, from charging into this unit, because he can no longer see them. And when we got to the next turn, my plan was actually to charge both of them in. And I wonder if this wasn't here, obviously I could charge in. If it was here, but I was more like there, and I could see through the gap. Theoretically, I could potentially fit down there and join in the charge, but when this unit hit, would they slide along a bit to make space for the Doomseeker to hit? Like there? Or would they leave enough space for the Doomseeker to just connect on the corner if they're going in together? Or would they not make space at all? Let me know what your understanding of the rules is. But as it stands, I can't actually see with the Doomseeker anyway, past my own unit and the pig, so it's irrelevant. But this unit has actually moved a little bit. So what they do is they move sideways, which has now taken my king out of the equation. So if I charge in, my king is no longer in base contact, which is a very annoying wrinkle of the rules. How if you don't have your character more towards the center, the enemy can kind of shift along, so when you charge in, you can't necessarily get your character touching, so they're going to have less attacks. And if the enemy declines the challenge, then you're stuck with supporting attacks with your, or just one attack from the king, which would be annoying. Hunkhop says, I think they would maximise and shuffle to the left so the Doomseeker would not have enough landing room. Is that how it works? Or would they charge simultaneously, and then you would leave space for each other? Anyway, it's not going to matter here. So the Organ Gun is going to die. And Vile Tide takes out a few hammerers, I think. Not many, though. And this wizard Doom bolts at the miners, I think, and kills one of them. And the Organ Gun dies over and into the Anvil of Doom. And turn 4 for me. So, the hammerers charge in. And it doesn't go very well, because I don't have that many attacks on the charge, and I miss with a lot of them. So I just have a really bad round of attacks, and I don't take that much damage back, but I just lose on combat res. And that's not ideal. I'm assuming these guys don't lose their rank bonus for being in the woods. So they end up with 7 combat res. I only get 5, so I have to fall back in good order, which is very sad, and now I'm going to have to try and charge them again. Doomseeker didn't want to charge the pig because I wouldn't get my impact hits, so I wouldn't kill it. And I tried to charge a different pig instead, which if we go back to the wide shot, I don't know if I can see it, but there's a pig all the way over there to the left. So the hammerers do a very bad job there. The Dwarf Warriors are just chilling, not charging anyone, just delaying, because as soon as I charge, I think I die. I'd rather get charged and have a bigger chance to live. Put stupidity onto the Bone Grinder Giant, but why do all these big monsters have leadership 10? What's the deal with that? What happened to a giant being like leadership 6 or 5? That would make more sense to me. I'd have to go back and look through some of the old rulebooks to see what leadership giants used to have. But leadership 10 seems pretty strong. And like a giant spawn, leadership 10, you can understand it's kind of mindless, so it's not susceptible to mind games. But if you make a giant spawn stupid, surely a mindless spawn that is now stupid is going to struggle to do anything and follow basic logic like I want to hurt the enemy. But they're all leadership 10 seemingly. Martin says 6 for the Orc and Goblin Giant in 8th. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. If you make a giant stupid, it would like start drooling, forget what it's doing, like drop its club on the floor, start picking its teeth, start flossing with the cow's tail or something. Just kind of clumsy, weird, giant stuff. But alas. Okay, so the Rangers have been shooting to not much effect so far, and I'm thinking that actually they've been kind of useless on this side. So they would have been better off supporting my other units somehow. So it would have felt like a waste at the time, and it would have obviously affected what my opponent did. But I'm thinking now, maybe the Hammer is in front, ready to get yeeted across the table in marching column, and the Rangers behind them ready to hold this objective and shoot whatever comes past. Would have been better, and at this stage I could have been setting up a flank onto the Bestigor with, with the Rangers now, because they've got 3 different war machines to chew through, so they can't do it all in one go. So they're going to be stuck there for a bit, so I could then flank them with the Rangers and whomp them with the great weapons, hopefully. And I wouldn't have got flanked because I've got 1 unit advancing through here, so the enemy can't come through this position. So that's something that maybe is worth exploring in the future. If you're going to send a unit off out in front, put another unit behind it to fill the gap that they're leaving, and then you can deal with things like this. Because I did make the conscious choice not to deal with this unit and just let them eat my war machines so I could get through and eat the baggage train and the gore. But obviously that's not going well so far. And this is into the next turn. And where are we? Here we go. So the anvil gets killed into the organ gun. And not looking too healthy. You can see where my Doomseeker, by the way, tried to charge into the pig over there. I want to charge from a distance where I get my impact hits, you see. Turn 4 for the enemy. Giant doesn't care about being stupid, charges into the flank of the warriors. Pig puts itself in front of the hammerers, which I don't mind too much because at least I'll be able to kill something, and then when I overrun it I can use drill to go wider and go forward and touch the gore, hopefully. Which again isn't that great now, because if you're only touching end to end, that means that loads of dwarves down this end can't fight because they're only movement 3. So dwarves are really hit by that only strike within your movement distance thing. And I actually think it's not perfect as a solution, that. Because it does vastly affect certain races, certain factions more than others. Because dwarves obviously don't have cavalry. Whereas a unit of cavalry in a big line, most of them will still be able to hit no matter how wide they are. And dwarves, even if they're not that wide, some of them are going to be left out of the fight. So it's a bit harsh on dwarves, I think. And yes, our artillery should be good. Dwarf artillery should be the best, and clearly it's worse than every other faction's artillery. I can't think of... Maybe Warriors of Chaos, the Hell Cannon, might be the worst piece of artillery in the game. But other than that, I think the Dwarf artillery is just worse than every other factions. The Cathay Cannon, the Bretonnian Bombard, the Empire Cannon are all better than the Dwarf Cannon. Volley Gun's better than the Organ Gun. It has more shots, it can use the Engineer's ballistic skill. The Organ Gun only has a slight range advantage and the less likelihood of it blowing up. The Bolt Thrower, not very good. The Flame Cannon, I've never even seen anyone use it, so it must be bad. The Grudge Thrower is very inaccurate. Arguably better than other factions' Rock Throwers because we have Engineers that can help. But Stone Throwers, I don't think are that great in the game at the moment. They're not as good as like a Goblin Doom Diver that can be steered back on target. So, Dwarf Engineering needs some work. Maybe they need to go and visit the Cathayan lands and go to college there or something and come back and learn how to make machines that work. Okay, so we've got all the war machines dead now, and they're now gunning for the cabbage, the enemy. And the dwarf warriors get chomped and chased down as well. So it's not looking great. My turn 5. I make this unit stupid. I'm planning to shoot them now, so my Thane with the handgun of doom and the stupidity gun are just blasting away at these Vestigor. My plan is, this is a really expensive unit with a doom ball in it. If I can do enough damage, make them fail a leadership test, they could go off the table, because look where they are. That's why I've gone here with my Thane, but unfortunately I can't do enough damage. Martin says, I think dwarves don't want to be more than 6-7 wide, so the impact of low movement doesn't make you lose attacks. Yes. I think that's optimal for dwarves, because you can get more ranks that way, which are just going to give you the free combat res. And previously you didn't care about that, because you could have more attacks with your powerful hitting warriors, but now they're not even going to get to strike anyway. So the hammerers, 7 wide may be the way to go rather than 10. Unless you're against an army that's also really wide and going head to head with you, like straight ahead, lined up. If you're going to be like end to end, then you still want to be bunched up to get the ranks, really. So, this is how we end up after overrunning the gore. So I've got 4 of my hammerers in contact. And the Doomseeker again fails a charge, trying to get to the gore unit there. This Doomseeker's just been running around failing charges all game. It's because he keeps having to go through difficult terrain now. Pung says, 7 wide so you don't get pie plated by pie plates. I don't find templates that big of a deal in the game. They don't hit that many models because of the partial rules and because of how big everyone's base is now. So I'm not really worried about templates. Turn 5. So the Vestigor move into the cabbage so they can destroy my baggage train in a minute. And everyone else is just spreading out a bit. And it's a drawn combat between the hammerers and the gore. Very disappointing, and it's because I'm just not getting to swing with many attacks. And now at this stage, because I'm no longer charging, it would be way better to have a rank, but the reason I've gone wide here is because I had to make contact with the enemy on the overrun. Otherwise I would have preferred to have been kind of a more compact shape like this, so that on turns when I'm not charging I can actually hit with more models in the future. But because it's a drawn combat, I don't get to do a reform or a redress the ranks. Turn 6 for me. So I do manage to defeat and chase off the gore a little bit, but don't manage to overrun into them, so I'm not going to have another go to fight them. The Doomseeker turned the tide with its whirling death and did quite a bit of damage to them. So that was good. Martin says, large blast direct hit from Cathay Rocket took out 16 Night Gobbos. That is a very good result. I think that's above average though. I don't think on average it's going to be killing 16. And also they are Night Goblins. But I think, is it only strength 3 that mortar? So yeah, on average you shouldn't be getting 16. So I think that's just an anomaly there. So you can see that quite a few of the gore got killed this time, but considering this is my most elite fighting unit, it's because they've managed to keep the king out of the action. They keep refusing the challenge of the king, so I just kick a character to the back, but they don't care about that, and then the king only has 1 attack. So in the next turn my cabbage is going to get destroyed. There we go. My engineer thinks he's going to run away and then decides, actually, you know what, I'm not going to flee, because that would be a bad idea, because now I'm fleeing, so I don't count as contesting this zone, so I'll just get charged and see if I can live instead. Challenge the Doom Bull and get killed. The miners are still alive though. Engineer ends up dying, and there we go. So I got 240 objective points, my opponent got 650, and then 200 for special feature held by them, and 250 for the zones, I think. It was domination in effect on this one. I can't remember now. I think it was. So, Ranger's still alive, Hammerer's still alive. Rangers didn't really accomplish anything this game. So, I think my placement logic for them obviously didn't turn out to be any good. Should have kept them together with the rest of the army so they could help out a bit, I think. And now there's some pictures of the armies. We've got some nice snow-dabbed Chaos Warriors. Now, as everyone knows, I am of the opinion that snow, little clumps of snow on bases, is the ultimate cheat code for painting an army. It just makes it grab people's eyeballs more. So it just makes anything look better if you just blob some snow all over it, regardless of the paint job. However, these are actually painted very well on top of that. You do see some very average painted armies that look good purely because they've got snow on the bases, but these are actually very nicely highlighted. So, nice there. Big unit of Dragon Ogres. I've not tried that with my warriors, actually, a big unit of Dragon Ogres. My fear is that you lose out a lot of attacks if they get hit by something like a dragon splat in the middle. Then you're not going to be able to attack with everybody. Nice Warp Fire Dragon. Lambo says, thank you, I painted these. Well, there you go. I can be very kind sometimes. Okay, we've got some Empire. I'm going to approve of this colour scheme because it's got some orange on it. Very nice. A flying monster, steam tanks, cannons, the kind of thing I expect to see from Empire. They're superior war machines. Wood Elves, obviously I played against these. Very, very stylish. Very nice. Very nice paint scheme. Very simple, clean paint scheme. Very effective. Dwarves, obviously. Everyone loves Dwarves. There's a nice baggage train. We've seen these Dwarves before in many a battle report. Played against it many a time. The very nice gem work and the text in the book there. And this is a dwarf list that contained 3 units of Longbeards, which is nice. I don't really have anything that I'm comfortable using as Longbeards at the moment, but I am in negotiations with someone to buy some 90s metal Longbeards, so maybe at some point I'll have some of them run 1 unit. Anvil of Doom, again. I don't think either of us are going to be persisting with a single Anvil of Doom, though. It's difficult to get those spells off now. So maybe we're going to move away from that. I predict the Rune Lord is going to have a big future. Rune Lord on foot. So, this is a very stylish Orc and Goblin army. And it also looks like it would do very well in this new scoring meta, because we've got 3 massive core units with loads of bodies that can score points with their superior unit strength. And then around it we've got lots of good supports. We've got things like Doom Divers that are very good at taking out enemy war machines. We've got Rock Lobbers. We've got skirmishing units that are fast. We've got Mangler Squigs for random moves. So we've got a lot of utility going on here around the solid core with Fanatics. I like how the Fanatics are fenced off in there until they're ready to be released. That's a nice narrative touch. So this is a very cool army. Did this one win Best Painted? I suspect it probably did, but I can't remember now. Very nice though. Then we've got some more Dwarves. So we've got some Grudge Throwers in here, some Gyrocopters, lots of small units of Dwarves. Now, I've not seen a lot of Dwarves going 4 wide. You don't see that very much. I think people are just in the habit of bringing things 5 wide from previous editions. But these are very nice Dwarves as well, with a cart. Very stylish. Everyone loves Dwarves. Then we've got this 3D printed Cathayan army that was ready for release day of Cathay to be unleashed on the world. Very cool looking. Very nice skilts. I'm sure we'll see full GW Cathay armies out there on the table over the next month or so. What's the fastest anyone's going to be able to get it ready for the table, do you think? A week for a full army for someone that just uses contrast paints, perhaps? So, final game. Close Quarters. On this one we have strategic locations and domination, so no special feature. So, 2 strategic locations, 1 on each side, and domination. So the way to score: kill things, hold these 2 objectives, and at the end of the game hold table quarters with high unit strength compared to the enemy. And we're up against Orcs and Goblins. So let me pull up this list here so I can tell you exactly what's going on with this one. Here we go. Okay, so let's go through the list and then I'll tell you the plan. So we have got a Black Orc War Boss on a Wyvern back there with the Talisman of Protection, Trollhide Trousers for a triple save goodness, coming in at only 339 points. The reason it's so much cheaper than a dragon is because a Wyvern is just nowhere near as good as a dragon. You get a much small number of stomps. way less attacks, so it's just not as good. And that's reflected in the points. But having a triple save means that it can be almost as survivable. There is an Orc Weird Knob Shaman, who is... Where's he hiding? He's out there somewhere. Oh, there he is, in the Black Orcs. And that is level 4 with Battle Magic and a Lore Familiar. There is an Orc Big Boss, who is... Is the Orc Big Boss... that one? Yeah, it is. That's the Battle Standard Bearer. And he's got Trollhide Trousers, Charmed Shield, so a temporary triple save. Then there is an Orc Big Boss on Boar, who is in this Boar unit right there. Then we've got a Night Goblin Odd Knob, who is in the Night Goblin unit, obviously, down here. A level 3 wizard with Warg Magic and 2 Power Scrolls and Fungus Wine. Core units, we've got the Black Orc unit here, 19 of them with a mixture of different weapons and full command. We've got 26 Orcs. So these are the, I think these are the Savage Orcs with Frenzy and Warpaint, Big Stabbers, full command, the Warg banner on the standard. These are very cool. We've got the Night Goblins, 36 of them, with 3 Fanatics and Thrusting Spears, Netters. I don't remember my opponent actually mentioning the Netters, so maybe that was just overlooked. But they do have Netters according to this list here. Then we've got the Cavalry, 14 Orc Boar Boys with full command and the Banner of Butchery. Then there are 2 Doom Divers and 2 Rock Lobbers. There's a Rock Lobber there, Doom Diver, and another Rock Lobber. They're spaced out to stop them being harassed by the miners, I think. So they're spaced out to stop me popping up between them. So not leaving any space for me to arrive and smash them all to bits. So, let's go back to the wide shots. Apparently these were also painted by Lambo. So, what is the plan? We've got walls of infantry here. The good news is, there's no objectives I have to advance on to score. So at the end of the game, I'll want to be contesting table sections, but really I can do my best to just gun down the enemy in this game, because there's nothing across the middle that I have to advance on. And the 2 units of Orcs and Goblins there, they're all big units, so if there was scoring things here they could advance onto, I wouldn't be confident that I could kill enough of them before they've racked up a good score and then run away, for example. So, them moving in is probably going to lead to them getting shot. So I've got the organ guns at the ready. Got my hammerers here, because I've got the Rune of Passage, so I'm less worried about this terrain than the enemy might be. And I'm supporting the side of my gun line there, because I've got the warriors between them as well. The engineer here, the anvil also on the hill. I'm expecting all my war machines to be killed by Doom Divers in turn 1, so I'm not too confident about them. Gyrocopter is going to move forward behind this and then start hassling things like cavalry and then chase after the war machines if the opportunity arises. My Doom Seeker is going to get in the way of the cavalry as well, hide behind here, hope they advance, I get the charge on them. That is the plan. So let's see how it goes. Some lovely cinematic shots here over the organ gun as we face off the blurry line of orcs. Swab says dwarf meta will be gyros now. I think gyros are going to be a big deal. Gyros are very good. They have more rolls now, because if you think about it, with more scoring all over the table, units are going to be more spread out. Armies are going to leave things behind, so there's going to be more for the gyros to hunt. If the enemy are coming forward more, there's going to be more units that we want to maybe block with gyros that are then going to flee and direct enemies, bait them, if there's like frenzied or impetuous units, and just flee from them and lead them a merry dance. And when there's zonal scoring, like the domination, then they can potentially turn the tide of a zone by leaping into it late in the game if they're still alive with their superior speed. So I think gyrocopters do definitely have a place now. I also think that miners have a place, because even though they're not having a huge impact, they haven't really been able to fight anything. The enemy are having to leave units near their baggage train at all times to stop the miners just coming in and destroying it. And it's forcing the enemy to deploy in a certain way as well to stop them getting in. So people are scared of the miners, even though they're terrible. People are concerned about them and they're deploying differently. Now, whether you can afford to just have a 100-point unit that's doing nothing in a 2,000-point game rather than 2,600, I'm not sure. So maybe a smaller unit of miners could be the way to go there. So I do like miners now. Maybe lots of small units of them will be the future. And yes, Swab, no one will ever charge the hammerers unless they have a death wish. So you really have to force them to engage the hammerers somehow, which I haven't really successfully done at this event yet. So I'm going first. And Doomseeker up behind there, Gyro behind the woods. Don't want to get charged, want to sneak out and charge something when it comes past that point. And we're going to start blasting with the guns, kill a couple of orcs, kill a black orc, kill a few goblins with the shooting. Lambo says, got to stop miners getting onto the battlefield. Yes, it is a very dangerous place for miners. But I suppose as long as you don't serve them alcohol, they should be alright. Swab is giving us the educated opinion of having one game of experience. There you go. Experience of older editions. Yeah, experience of older editions is important because a lot of the rules of this game are drawn on older editions. The way they come together is a little bit different, but a lot of the fundamentals are still there. So the shooting didn't do a huge amount, but we've just started whittling down the units, which is okay because we're at long range for everything. In the enemy turn 1, everything's moving up. The Wyvern is the most concerning, but on this side it's only really got the Thunderers to kill. And if it starts coming this way, you're looking at things like Hammerers, which it wouldn't really want to deal with. So we'll see what it goes for. Doomdiver, Rocklobber. Don't successfully kill an Organ Gun, but do scatter and take out some Dwarf Warriors. Warp says, I'm just happy to collect my old armies and make runed up characters again. Yep, runed up Dwarf characters are a lot of fun. I think the Dwarf book isn't the greatest. The artillery is obviously really bad. They could have given us way better engineering runes. Way better and way cheaper, I think. There are just certain things missing that I feel should be in there. You should be able to get a cannon that does more damage, for example. And there's just certain thematic things aren't really there. They make them, the runes make them more reliable or give them magical attacks, but they don't give them more punch generally. Like, if you could fit a rune that had the same effect of the Cathayan cannon, where it lands and units nearby lose Swift Stride and lose 1 to their movement, that would be amazing. But then Cathay just have that as their standard cannon. Dwarves don't even have that as an option. We don't have anything close to that. And it should be D3+1. Every cannon that is static on the ground should be D3+1 damage. I can understand it on the steam tank because it's a mobile cannon that's not going to be as powerful because it's not on a solid platform. So make that one worse, that's fine. But D3+1, I think every other cannon, that should just be the standard. Back when cannons were D6 wounds, back in 8th edition, I was calling for them to be changed to D3+1 instead. Because you lose the feel bad of rolling a 1, so you're never just going to do 1 wound. But you also lose the feel bad for the opponent of you rolling a 6 and just deleting their monster in 1 shot. So I think D3+1 is the right amount for a cannon in a game of Warhammer based on how many wounds things have. So 1 organ gun destroyed immediately by enemy artillery, as expected. Doomdiver is just really accurate at landing on them. I think one of them just failed to wound, which is why this one survived as well. It may have been a Rocklobber that took out the other one with a direct hit. So Rocklobbers are okay in War Machine versus War Machine. Cannons are a bit easier to actually hit the target usually, but Rocklobbers can obviously fire indirect, which is good. Yeah, so it was a Rocklobber. Turn 2 for me. So the Anvil has buffed itself with improved armour, suspecting that because one of the organ guns is down, the enemy are probably going to drop rocks or a goblin with a pointy helmet onto the Anvil next, so I've buffed up my own armour ready for that. Other than that, just doing shooting, putting stupidity onto the goblins, although with all the extra ranks they are currently on leadership 9, so unlikely to fail, but if they do, they're stuck there and can't bring their fanatics closer to me, so hopefully they fail. We'll see. I wonder how Rob feels about me using the Rob Goblin Face dice as the stupidity marker. I don't know if he knows. I guess he's not watching the video anymore. I think he just dropped in and then wandered off again to do his own thing. But I'm sure someone will let him know that I'm using his face as a stupidity marker, to try and drive a rift between fellow members of the TSN Arena Curious Creatures. So these orcs here aren't doing very well. They're taking quite a lot of casualties from shooting. I'm focusing more on them than the Black Orcs because their armour's not as good, and I think I can whittle them down to a manageable number faster. Also, they're going to be the unit that holds the objective if the Black Orcs are coming forward, so if I can kill them, that means no more scoring for the Orcs. The Doomseeker charged into the cavalry, who moved up into its sight, and killed a couple with impact hits, got into a challenge, won the combat, and... hold on, I think I actually lost the combat by 1. Gave ground 2 inches, they restrained, didn't follow me, so I had to kill 2 or 3. Gyrocopter's moved behind here, so it can't be charged by anybody, and then I'm going to go around the back and start hunting war machines. Yes. So the Doomseeker was pushed away, but it did get some kills in, which is the only time in the whole event it actually got to swing any real meaningful attacks. It killed some gore in the previous game, but didn't have any effect. So, scoring points solidly as you'd expect on this scenario. Turn 2 for the enemy. The cavalry back into the Doomseeker because they do have some abilities that work on the charge, not necessarily requiring a 3-inch charge. Lambo says, I'm going to say the Boar Boys had like a minimum +5 to combat errors. Yes. Kung says, might be worth swapping the Doomseeker for another gyro. Probably, but I do think the Doomseeker is hilarious. Even though it's not very effective, you can make a Doomseeker that's very powerful, but those ones just get shot. And with all the new scoring options, maybe it's less impactful for your enemy to miss out on 50 to 100 points by killing a Doomseeker because they can score so many points other ways now. So maybe the Doomseeker's got worse because there are other ways to score now other than just killing things. So you could argue that the total number of victory points available in a game for that the Doomseeker is denying, the percentage of points has dropped significantly. So Doomseekers maybe have got worse as a result of that. Their special ability is nowhere near as good now. The Wyvern goes into the Thunderers. Night Goblins move forwards towards the Rangers, getting ready to unleash their Fanatics in the next turn. And the Orcs just redress their ranks a bit. The Black Orcs are not too eager to go and fight the Hammerers by the looks of it, so they're just hanging out behind the woods for now. And let's see what happens next. Well, one of the Rock Lobbers blows itself up by rolling a 1, which is very unfortunate, but it also means my Gyrocopter doesn't have anything to chase after next turn now. I was going to land here and then charge into that one. So I'll have to maybe go for that one first. So a nice bonus there. However, Doomdiver does kill some more Dwarf Warriors. And another Rock Lobber lands on the Engineer with a direct hit and then rolls a 1 to wound. So the Engineer survives a direct rock hitting him on the head. So I don't know what's under that hat. Probably some kind of shock-absorbing, highly engineered plate of some kind. So, into... you can see here the Doomseeker's dead, and the piggy sort of overrun beyond him. A thick dwarven skull. I don't know if that's enough to withstand a rock, though. Lots of the Thunderers get killed, but they managed to roll, I think it's like a 3 on the leadership test, so they just fall back. Or give ground, it may have been. So they're still in combat with the Wyvern, so they can live with that. And because it's my turn next, the Wyvern doesn't want to be stuck out in the open, because it means I could shoot at it with the organ gun and the handgun Thane, who is in here somewhere, and maybe the anvil and the stupidity gun. So you don't want to be stuck in out of combat going into the enemy turn if you're a big monster among a gun line. You want to be stuck in combat until it's your turn next. So really, the ideal is that you leave one guy alive and then kill him in their own turn. So then, when it's your turn next, you're free to attack something else. Fanatics pop out, and they do a little bit of damage, but not that much. They do all make it to their target through the Rangers and the Anvil. The Anvil takes a bit of damage, some of the Rangers die, but not a huge amount. And yeah, this is my turn now, but the Fanatics still popped out. So, on my turn, you can see we're blasting away. The Hammerers have turned round to face the Wyvern, who manages to finish off the Thunderers and the Cavalry, and the Black Orcs, keeping them all in the front. The Black Orcs shot with the Stupidity Gun to see if they have to stay there. And whittling down this Orc unit here with my shooting. Gyrocopter getting on the hill, ready to charge the Doomdiver. Miners have entered the table now as well, after passing their ambush roll. This is the place they want to come on, because it's kind of safe from the enemy. It's too close to one of the war machines to be shot, and maybe they can get in there and help if the Gyrocopter gets killed by a Doomdiver or something. So, into the enemy turn, and you can see the Wyvern tried to charge the Organ Gun, who fled, and then charged into the flank of the Dwarf Warriors. I'm not too concerned about this though. As we've seen, the Dwarf Warriors stand up quite well against monsters, especially ones that are in a unit strength less than 10, because that way they don't lose their rank bonus. You can see the scorings just rolling up nicely for both sides. Yes, this is the enemy turn. So into the Warriors. The Goblins, who have been buffed up this turn, I think, with +1 AP, charge into the Rangers. But I do 6 wounds on the stand and shoot, so I don't think it's going to end well for the Goblins. And because I've got such a lead with the stand and shoot, I elect to go with hand weapon and shield, so I'll be on a 3-up save down to a 4-up from their extra AP, because they were going to hit me first. So I didn't want the risk, because we both have hatred, they would be striking first. I didn't want to risk that they would end up killing like 6 guys with a good roll, and then I would be stuck with a 6+ save. So I wanted to make sure I survive, because I've already banked these 6 points from the stand and shoot. So one of the Fanatics goes through the anvil again and does another wound, so it's almost dead. And the Black Orcs go into the woods. They're not too eager though, so I do actually have a charge available on them now, because I can extend my unit to there with drilled, moving this guy there, and then charge forward. It would be in the flank, so I'd have to contact the flank. So at the end of the turn, when I get the wide shot, I'll tell you how we line it up. So quite a lot of the Dwarf Warriors get killed, because we found out my champion is not allowed to issue a challenge because he's not in the fighting rank. So if you see the enemy coming from one particular side, you want the champion to be like here, because then he'd be in the fighting rank, which is these 2 ranks, and then he could then issue a challenge. But as it is now, he's just too far away to challenge. Weirdly, if there was a unit fighting here as well, I could issue a challenge, which could then be accepted by the Orc boss on Wyvern, even though they're miles away. It's very weird how challenges work. But I'm still alive, despite losing combat there. And I defeat the Goblins, but they do not fail their leadership test by that much. They just give ground. So I restrain, and then I'm going to either shoot them or charge them again. Swab says champions can't move through right as they're not characters. Correct, that's why the challenge wasn't allowed. So I wasn't allowed to issue a challenge with my champion, because he can't bust his way through the ranks like another character could. So if you're going to be charged in the flank by something like this, and you want to issue a challenge, make sure you redress or reform your unit so the champion is here, because you're infantry and you've not charged, so you can fight in 2 ranks. So that means your champion is in the fighting rank if he's on this side. So that's where you should move to if you're about to be hit and you want to challenge. Okay, so into my turn. So what am I going to do from this position? The Rangers are going to charge in there, so they can strike at the same time as the Goblins while using great weapons, so I can hopefully kill a load of them. Gyrocopter is going to charge the Doomdiver. The Hammerer is going to try and charge the Black Orcs and get that fight started, and the Engineer is going to get out of the way so he doesn't get overrun into past the Dwarf Warriors. Turn 4. Hammerers charge into the flank of the Black Orcs. So actually, if we go back here, so I use drill to put one guy there. To charge into the flank obviously requires a bit of rotation, but not actually that much to make contact. So we line it up and see what kind of angle I need to have the unit at in order to touch in the right place. So we then draw out the line, so it ends up looking kind of like that sort of a line, like a few inches forward, and then measure how far it is there, and then see whether that's going to be enough to make the charge. Through the terrain, might I add. So we worked out that I needed a 7-inch charge to get in through the terrain, which means I need to roll at least a 4 on both dice. Swab says, what tools do you use for wheeling? So, I don't have a specific wheeling tool. There are ones that exist where they're kind of curved, but I usually use a straight, just a little ruler to measure how far the corner moves. But really, you should have a little curved thing. So I'll have to talk to Mr. Rob and see if he can get a load of them printed or something. So I think that would be a good tool for the old world. Just a little curved wheel thing. So I need a 7-inch charge to get into their flank, because obviously you don't measure this distance, because that's obviously huge. Once they touch, then the rest of the move isn't factored into the charge distance. So it's a 7-inch required. And they do make it. So I roll a 4, it's a double 4, so I get 4 on both dice, just enough to make it in. And I end up winning the combat, pushing them back, but I don't manage to catch up with them after they fall back in good order. So we have got the fight started now. We've got a nice big Hammerer versus Black Orc battle brewing, and we'll see if they want to re-spark it. In the challenge, my king against the enemy BSB didn't do that much, but the rest of the Hammerers did enough damage, and I've got the BSB in here as well. I've got a +1 combat res on my banner as well, so it's a decent res they've got on them. And against a unit that's this wide, I'm not going to be losing attacks in subsequent fights now, because they're also quite wide. So against Dwarves, maybe what you want to do is maybe go even narrower. If you think the Hammerers are tougher than your guys, maybe you want to go narrow against them, so they're going to miss out on attacks, so I would have to go narrow as well. Could be something to ponder. So the Gyrocopter kills the Doom Diver and is now resting there. He didn't actually want to overrun, but I failed my leadership test, so he nearly went off the table, but didn't quite. And I've made this unit stupid again, as you can see by the Rob Goblin dice face. The stupidity gun, so far at this event, nearly every turn of every game he has made someone stupid. And the amount of tests that have been failed as a result of those stupidity statuses has been 0. So that is quite a remarkable stat. I don't know whether that means the stupidity gun is just a terrible pick in the army, or whether that means all my opponents just got lucky to pass the leadership tests every single time. Maybe they just aren't good targets for it anymore, because everyone has good leadership, because they're always around a general, usually on a big monster, so it's got like an 18-inch range to inspire you. So maybe stupidity effects that you can dish out aren't that great after all. It might be good. If the enemy's unlucky, it's the best thing in the whole game, probably, because it's just going to stop amazing units in their tracks. But if they're just rolling average, then it does nothing. I might stick with it though. So you can see after killing the warriors, the Wyvern is now into the Anvil, who's only got 1 wound left, so that's quite scary. Well, it mostly kills the warriors. They run away through the Anvil, they bounce all the way through my units to the other side, so they're still fleeing. And they're going to need a very low roll now, because they are below 25%, there's only 4 of them. And this fight here, you can see the Fanatic actually went through both units there, and did a bit of damage to both of them. A lovely upside down shot there, so you can see we're whittling away at each other's units here. The Goblin Champion and the Ranger Champion actually killed each other, because they were striking simultaneously, so they chopped each other's heads off at the same time. And combat rares, I can't see what the score is really there. But not much has happened. It looks like I just pushed them back another couple of inches maybe. So, these orcs try to charge the gyro. I hold, because I'd flee off the table otherwise. And they do not make their charge though, so they just move to there. The Fanatic moves away from anybody. This fight's going on, this fight's going on. The Black Orcs do not want to charge me, because why would you? And yes, so that was turn 4. So on this turn, you can see I've slowly getting through these goblins and pushed them back even further. It's my turn next, so I restrain, so I can charge them again or shoot them. And I'm about to go into my turn. I think the Black Orcs may have moved back a little bit. And the cavalry have turned round, thinking, hey Hammerers, if you stay there, maybe we could charge you. Maybe we don't want to, because we're just going to stay here and get domination points. So, into my turn 5. we have more. Let's see how many there were. Yes, you can see more of the Black Orcs have been killed. Some Hammerers have been killed as well. I win combat and push them back a bit again. But again, don't quite catch up to them. And you can see here that my Rangers kill all the Goblins except for the Wizard, who flees, and I pursue but do not catch him. And the Anvil gets killed by the Wyvern, who fails the restraint and has to overrun and ends up here. The Boars are just hanging out there. Gyrocopter kills another War Machine and is gunning for the last one. So there's just one Rock Lobber left. That one killed itself, and the Gyro has gobbled up these two. So it's doing a good job over there. Gyrocopters could be the future. We're going to have more War Machines abandoned while people go out to scavenge and score objectives. Turn 5 for the Orcs. So the Wyvern turns around after charging the... Oh yeah, so the 4 Dwarf Warriors in the corner. I rolled a 3 on the leadership test. So you would need a double 1, but they have a musician as well, which means they need a 3, which I hope is correct, because that's what I rolled, and I then rallied them. So they got charged by the Wyvern again, and they fled off the table and died. So they are dead ultimately. My miners flee from the charge of these orcs because I don't want to fight. The miners, they didn't come here for a fight. They came here to just stand somewhere and score points. They're not interested in getting killed. That's madness. The shaman is still on the run there. The Black Orcs again just move back a bit because they don't want to fight the Hammerers too much. So they're giving me a chance to maybe fail the charge if I roll like a double 1. And that's it for the turn. Into my turn 6. So what am I going to do? I've got one more chance to wipe out the Black Orcs to get some points. I'm going to be able to kill this War Machine. And the miners just want to rally and then not get killed. And then everything else just wants to... The cavalry and the Wyvern, I'm not going to kill them. So I just need to try and kill this wizard probably. And hide and not get killed by anything else. So... The Rangers manage to shoot down the Wizard. The Gyrocopter manages to kill the Rock Lobber. The Hammerers do successfully whoop the Black Orcs, who keep having Oaken Shield cast on them, by the way, which is why it's been taking so long, I think. But look at that, I do get up to 10 combat res against 6. They fail their leadership. The BSB is still in there, so they fail again, and it actually gets worse the second time. So they run, and they get cut down by the Dwarves. So, big points there for the Black Orc unit. The BSB was in there as well. So, big points taken there. Turn 6 for the enemy. You can see, by the way, that my engineer has moved down here. Because I don't want to be charged by the cavalry. And the Wyvern is quite far away. So if he tries to charge me, I'll flee and then give away less points, hopefully, by not being caught. However, the engineer tries to flee and rolls like a 3. So he ends up getting caught anyway. Or it may even have been a double 1. It might have been just 1 inch I fled. It was like 1 or 2 inches and he got caught and killed. So engineer's dead. And then the enemy are just spreading out a bit and worrying about the domination scoring. So these guys are down here. The miners are up there with the orcs, so that area is contested. But I've got my hammerers in there as well, so that's going to be mine, but not purely. This one's going to be the orcs. The bottom left is looking like mine at the moment, just about, because these guys are actually 6. Does the Wyvern have 7 wounds? So maybe it's the Wyvern's territory there, and I've got a gyro up there uncontested. So let's see. Unchosen Realms. Don't think a musician would help, just increase your leadership, doesn't modify your dice roll. Is that correct? Do you not get +1 on the ability to rally if you've got a musician? Because I'm sure that's a thing. Someone let me know anyway, because I'm sure that's how I've played it and how I've seen it played. If you've got a musician, you're on a 3 to rally when you're down to your last few models. Let me know if that's wrong though, because that'd be very good to know going forward. I'll have to dive in the rulebook and check the wording on that later. So they died anyway, and let me pull up the score. So, round 5 here. we go. So, let's see what Lambo says. If a fleeing unit contains a musician, they have +1 modified to its leadership whenever it attempts to rally up to a maximum of leadership 10. +1 leadership. So does that mean that they shouldn't be affected and it should just be a double 1? Is that the right way to play that? Or is it, in fact, that you only need a 3 instead of a double 1? Interesting. Because I've always played it as you need a 3 when you've got a musician. So if it is, in fact, a double 1, then okay, good to know going forward. It hasn't come up in a huge amount of games. Usually, if the last couple of models are fleeing, the musician's already dead. It's usually like just the champion or the standard bearer and the champion running away. So it's not that often that you'll have a unit fleeing and the musician is actually still alive and they're below 25%. So it's quite a rare case. Martin says below 25% is always double 1. Okay, good to know going forward. Yes. So lots of people have been playing that wrong then. So I'll have to start spreading the word about that. I think the only times it's ever come up in games where someone's had a musician and needed a double 1, it's always been played as they actually need a 3. So it's very good to know that. Okay, so the final result here, when we factor in kill points, domination zones, and the objective scoring, is a narrow win for the Dwarves. So I have a lead of about 600 and something points, and you need 400 points for it to be a win. So it is a narrow 11-9 win for the Dwarves. Lambo says, copied from rulebook, previous editions it used to be a +1 to rally, so maybe that's where everyone's got it from then. Because it's quite understandable that people don't actually read the rulebook cover to cover. And the sections that you have to go through to find everything you need for one part of the game aren't particularly logical. So it's understandable that people kind of add in extra things out of their minds, and then that spreads amongst player bases. People play rules that they've never personally seen themselves in the book. Because if you want to find out all the rules for rallying a fleeing unit, you don't have everything you need in one place generally. You have to dive through different sections of the book to find it. So it's difficult. The rules, there is an app which is quite good. Is that the rules index, that app? Because I use the app. Yeah, the Old World Online Rules Index. That has all the rules in there. But what that lacks sometimes is the specific wording of things. It isn't always the easiest to find. And also the context and a lot of things is missing. So it's not perfect, but it is very good. I do use that app a lot. But there are a couple of rules that people probably still play wrong and don't realise after all this time. Because the practicality of reading all the rules yourself is not made easy by the layout of the rulebook. Martin says, it was a fun game, shame of the result. In hindsight, probably should have picked a different layout to veto. Possibly. Whether the terrain was a help. I was able to get a few more crossbow shots off by using a hill. The terrain, I was able to use the terrain to kind of sneak around the back a bit. Maybe I would have been able to do that with any of them, with the gyrocopter. I think the Wyvern did a good job in this game. People are going to learn that flyers can no longer just plow into strong enemy units anymore. The strong infantry units. And by strong, I mean tough, not they're going to kill you, they're just going to beat you with combat res. So the Wyvern on this occasion managed to get in there in a situation where it couldn't be challenged, so it actually did well. But in general, you're going to want to avoid those infantry bricks with big flyers now, and go for the juicier stuff. So, Martin says, the middle was too open, the buildings being to the side didn't help. That is also true, actually. The objectives being in the middle meant that I was able to get a lot of unobstructed shooting off into these orcs, and also the black orcs with my organ guns. And that did a decent amount of damage. The organ guns didn't do bad in this game, actually. For a change. I don't think organ guns are going to stay in the list, though. Unfortunately, I do really like them, I just don't think they're effective for the points. If they could use the engineer's ballistic skill, they would be great, but they can't. I would take 2 organ guns and 2 naked engineers every time. If they could use the engineer's ballistic skill, that would be amazing. But they can't, so they're terrible. I think the future of dwarves, we're going to want gyrocopters. Gyrocopters and miners have a job to do now, I think, so people may start taking those for scoring. I also think that infantry bricks are so tough to hurt now. Flyers are going to learn they have to concentrate on the squishy stuff. They're going to hunt down war machines. They're going to hunt down anvils, small shooting units. They're just going to eat those for breakfast. So I think consolidating into multiple, preferably core unit like Death Stars, like a big unit of Longbeards with a fighty character in it, a big unit of Rangers with a fighty character in it, and build the army around those 2 big tough units that can also score because they're core. That could be a decent build. Maybe Iron Drakes without a Trollhammer Torpedo could come back as well. They're still good, I think. The Drake guns are still good. Cinderblast bombs are still good. It's just the torpedo took a big hit, so we just won't take the torpedo anymore. The problem is with taking lots of Longbeards, as one of the dwarf players found out at this event, is that they might not make it into a fight. You can score points, but you're not going to catch up to the enemy if they don't want to fight you. And they can kind of dance around you, get multiple charges off on you. Speed still kills in this game. Speed is still very good. If you've got a big flyer and also a cavalry unit going for the same thing, they can only challenge one thing. If you've got a champion in your cavalry unit to accept that challenge, the flyer can just chew up everybody without having to worry about anything. So if you've got something fast to combo in with your flyer, so a dragon and something else that's also fast going in at the same time, I think is one good way to crack units. Certain units like hammerers still won't get cracked by that probably, because charging them in the front is just a terrible idea. So people just won't charge them. So I do really want to try the double anvil hammerer unit just tooled up with all the killy characters in there. Double anviled across the table in marching column, so hopefully at least one of them works with the movement and gives them the extra bit they need to get further across the table with the conveyance. So I do want to try that, but other than that I don't know if hammerers are going to have a place either, because they're a big unit that you can never make core, so you can't just stand them in one place. You need to be hunting down and killing things, and the points you get as an enemy unit for standing on one objective aren't enough for you to leave a very expensive unit there to fight hammerers. And the kind of units that you would leave there for hammerers to kill are very cheap infantry units that are going to sit there, score enough points so it was worth their while by the time the hammerers get there to kill them. So you're not getting value that way. So I struggle to see a good role for the hammerers. You can't really guard your war machines with them, for example, because then it means you're not out there scoring points with anything if you camped back, so the enemy will just get on the objectives and win. So hammerers, I'm struggling to see their future, but I still do want to try them with the double anvil, so you will see them again. And what am I thinking in terms of my Warriors of Chaos? I think the Warpfire Dragon is going to be great. I think changing my Lord on Dragon into an Exalted Champion on Dragon with a triple save still is going to be good. I think those 2 dragons together are going to be effective. But for my warriors, I think I need another core unit, so I'm going to paint more Chaos Warriors for a start. I've got some of the Hero Quest Chaos Warriors and Battle Masters Chaos Warriors, so I'd be able to make 2 slightly smaller units instead of 1 mega unit. So that makes that army immediately more usable in the matched play guide world that we live in now, because I would have 2 solid core units to score on objectives. So that would make them playable. So I'm looking forward to trying that out as well. Who do I think is going to struggle from my Chaos Warriors collection? I'm just glancing over my shoulder now. Maybe the Chaos Knights, because I've only got 5 of them, so if I get more of those painted they'll do alright, because they're a core unit that can score as well, but only 5, so as soon as you kill one, your unit strength is below 10, and there's certain things you can't do when you're below unit strength 10. So I need to get more of those painted. I've got some more Chaos Knights to work on. Hung says, the bigger the Death Star lists, the more value Stone Throw will be. The bigger the units are, the better templates are, yes, but there's still a limit on how many hits you can get fully under the template. So you're still relying on making those partial rolls. And I just don't think stone throwers are as much of an answer to big blocks as they want to be. If someone's taking a Death Star, maybe they've also tooled it up with a ward save, or they've got a spell to give it the ward save. And I don't think the stones do enough damage, unfortunately. Because it would be nice if they did, if they were a bit of a counter to massive infantry blocks. But as it stands at the moment, I'm not sure. The super large templates can do damage, as someone was saying in the chat earlier. Took out, what was it, like 16 or 19 goblins or something. So when it goes well, then that's fine. But I think on average, it's not going to do as much as you want. And it's not going to kill enough points worth of models each turn for the risk you're taking of it blowing up for one, if it's any army that doesn't have engineers. And often the artillery, the stuff that the artillery is really great at killing is like a lowish wound single thing, like a chariot maybe. Dropping rocks on a chariot can do some good work, because they're not usually going to have as many saves as a big monster. Or dropping a rock on a gyrocopter is always a solid idea for the enemy. It's a small base though, so it's not that easy to hit. So multiple gyrocopters for the dwarves, I think, in the next set of games. I'm definitely going to try that out. And other than that, Ironbreakers are definitely not going to get a look in unless they get some kind of buff, because all the other infantry has got way better, and they've only got slightly better and haven't had their points adjusted in any way. So they've got a bit better in that if you charge them, they get to fight in 2 ranks now. But all the other infantry also get +1 to their save, whereas Ironbreakers don't, because they're already maxed out at 3+. So they can't use parry to increase it to 2. So you just get no benefit from one of the big changes that's benefiting infantry, because they're already paying for an all-round whole game 3-up save. So it's a sad day for Ironbreakers. I want them to be great, but they need something else. Whether they need a better ward save, because I think as it is right now, they only have a small ward save against non-magical attacks. So I think they just need a solid ward save, or the ability, a special rule that lets them parry at 2-up. Would make Ironbreakers suddenly really amazing. And I would immediately take them if you just let them parry on a 2-up save, Ironbreakers. That would give them a roll. They're the ultimate anvil then. And I would take them instantly. But as it stands, I don't think they're worth it. Or they could drastically come down in points as well. They're also not core. So the job they want to be doing is best done by core units. Standing somewhere and the enemy charging you is what they want to do. And not being a core unit means you can only be stood somewhere that isn't scoring you points this whole time. You can't be on an objective and doing that as a special unit because you're not scoring. So if there was a way to make them core, they would be maybe an interesting option. If you could take one unit as core with a certain type of general or something, maybe there would be a place then. But they're not really viable in my opinion at the moment. So it's sad because they are my favourite unit. I would like to see them get improved at some point. War machines obviously need some kind of tweak because the dwarf ones are not good enough. The game shouldn't be dominated by war machines, but the problem is all the other armies just have war machines that are significantly better and more dominant than the dwarf ones. So that's the problem. It's not that the dwarf ones are necessarily too weak, because you don't want war machines to dominate. It's the fact that the other armies have war machines that are really good and the dwarves don't. So it's not a case of them keeping war machines balanced. It's a case that the dwarf ones are just weak, which is sad. Tung says a brick of thunderers or quarrelers. Quarrelers are definitely not horrible. You can use them in a similar way to the way I use rangers. You just have lower weapon skill is the issue, and lower ballistic skill. So they're not as good at fighting or shooting as rangers, and they're competing for that same core unit spot. So rangers also have scouts, so if the opportunity arises, you can do something extra with them as well. But maybe in this age of having more core units, maybe you want to squeeze more units out of your core, so you want to go for something cheaper like Quarrelers, so it could be worth a try. Thunderers, also not the worst unit in the whole game, but they're not great. the shorter range on the Thunderers and the lower ballistic skill than Rangers again, still an issue. So I really like Rangers. Just a bit more expensive. I think they're worth it though. I think Rangers are still good. Rangers and Longbeards, very good units. So we shall see. Okay, we've been going for 3 hours 14 minutes, and I think it's about time to wrap this one up. It's very late into the evening, so let's get the episode thumbnail up. And Kung says the parry has made Thunderers and Quarrelers worth it. If you give them shields, then definitely. But sometimes you don't want to pay the extra points for the shields. But they are good though. If you do that, you get them a slightly better save. So, could be worth dabbling with that. With the Thunderers and Quarrelers with shields. Maybe I'll give it a try and see how it goes. Okay, time to wrap this one up. Don't forget, obviously, to like the video and subscribe and all that good stuff. And if you value 3-hour tournament reports and battle reports, then why not pledge your entire life savings in the Patreon or PayPal or various donation buttons all over the place, which is going to pay for me to buy more models and attend more tournaments. That's pretty much where all my disposable income goes. Tournament tickets and new miniatures and paints, obviously. So, don't forget to leave in the comments any thoughts on any of these games, any of the rules, queries that came up, any of the lists involved that you have thoughts on. What do you think about the emerging meta? What do you think is going to dominate now? Do you think we're still going to see dragons and Pegasus Knights whooping everybody? Do you think something else is going to take over? Do you think goblins are going to win with their massed core units with fanatics? What's it going to be? What are your thoughts on the new Matched Play Guide book? And maybe I'll do a video just talking about that in depth at some point as well, now that we've played an entire tournament using the book and got a bit more to grips with it and have seen all those rules in the context of a game. It's stuck a bit more in people's minds, so we can have a better discussion about that now, I think. And don't forget to check out all the social media shenanigans down in the description as well. I've got Discord server, Facebook group, Twitter and all that good stuff. And thanks for tuning in. All that remains to be said is good night out there, whatever you are.